Boom! A divine platform, once revered and tempered through 9 heavenly reforgings, collapses under the crushing weight of a 15-layer Tao domain. Unable to resist the overwhelming rules tearing it apart, with the Buddha Lord's Xianxia in hand, Li Hao strikes again and again, each blow shattering the sacred ground of the spiritual Buddha Hall and sending tremors rippling across Spirit Mountain like thunder from the heavens. The entire mountain groans as if caught in divine judgment, its sacred structures reduced to drifting dust. From afar, stunned Buddhist masters watch in disbelief as Li Hao drives his fist into the fallen figure of the Buddha Lord, splitting the land with sheer force, yet the enemy rises, untouched, shrouded in radiant light and Tao power. Ice floods Li Hao's gaze. He draws the 10 extreme sword, its blade humming with divine wrath. In response, the Buddha Lord awakens, releasing a surge of pressure as 13 terrifying layers of Tao domains erupt from within. His form shifts hair and face, blazing with crimson gold brilliance, ascending into the divine power extreme realm. Their clash echoes through the heavens as Li Hao prepares to carve truth from illusion with the blade of judgment. The divine weapon platform, once a formidable construct forged through 9 celestial refinements, crumbled under the overwhelming pressure of a 15-layer Tao domain, shattering into nothingness. Boom! With the Buddha Lord's Xianxia in hand, Li Hao slammed it mercilessly against the earth, rupturing the sacred floor of the spiritual Buddha Hall, sending shockwaves across Spirit Mountain like a furious deity swinging a cosmic hammer. Structures cracked, stairs collapsed, and the entire mountain quaked in fear. Distant peaks watched in horror as Buddhist masters turned their trembling gazes toward the epicenter of chaos. Another thunderous boom! Li Hao's fist came crashing down upon the Buddha Lord's fallen form, tearing open the earth and annihilating the sacred hall. Yet the figure beneath the dust emerged untouched, glowing with divine golden light, protected by the radiant Xianxia and the overwhelming force of the Tao. Li Hao's eyes turned to ice. He summoned the 10 extreme sword, a legendary blade seized from Qingzhou, gleaming with deadly resolve. The moment it appeared, the Buddha Lord's expression shifted to solemn clarity, summoning an explosive force that surged layer upon layer, 13-tier Tao domain unleashed in an instant. His body ignited with golden crimson hues, eyes blazing like stars, stepping fully into the divine power extreme realm. And then came the chilling declaration. I am the merciful hand of Buddha, he chanted in a low tone, and suddenly a radiant palm surged forth, though not as vast as Li Hao's palm. It allowed movement within Li Hao's Tao domain, manifesting as a colossal Buddha palm, blazing like a divine mountain ready to crush him. The overwhelming force of this Buddha palm, paired with a 13-layer Tao domain, pushed Li Hao's own domain back, descending with unstoppable momentum. Its might rivaled the most fearsome strikes, igniting the sky with a blinding glow. Li Hao, eyes burning with fury, shouted defiantly and met the divine strike with a single resolute slash, unleashing the final cycle of spring and autumn, a dance of life and decay, of yin and yang swirling together. The earth quaked, Spirit Mountain trembled, the Buddha Hall cracked apart as the Buddha Lord's form was smashed back beneath the mountain depths. Though Li Hao was driven back, the golden palm, once cleaved, rapidly began to heal as the Buddha Lord soared again into the heavens. Clad in flowing Xianxia, he acknowledged Li Hao's strength and spoke coldly of sin and fate, condemning the slaying of so-called noble bloodlines. Li Hao remained silent, but his aura surged, golden hair now streaked with silver light, standing firm at the brink of transformation, ready to ascend. The battle erupted in an instant as the calm shattered into lethal intent. The challenger's aura surged higher, forcing the solemn figure of the Buddha Lord into silence, his eyes sharp as blades. With a cold declaration of 2,000 years of cultivation and a question of what could possibly bridge such a gap, he pressed his palms together and unleashed a storm of power. Behind him, the faint outline of heaven and earth veins flared into view, proof of his complete extreme realm, his body's major veins fully connected. Soft chanting flowed as his primordial spirit emerged, blazing like a miniature sun and roaring to sever the divine soul before him, its force carrying the crushing weight of countless lifetimes of mastery. In an intense moment, as the Buddha Lord's primordial spirit surged toward him, Li Hao's freshly formed primordial spirit erupted from his own being. Though less brilliant than the Buddha Lord's, Li Hao's spirit was fearless. With a powerful fist, he struck against the Buddha Lord's suppressive palm, the divine flames of sun essence igniting from the palm's impact. While the fire would have reduced an ordinary soul to ash, Li Hao's primordial spirit absorbed the flames, enhancing his own strength. The Buddha Lord, momentarily surprised, hadn't anticipated such a response from the 16-year-old, who had already condensed his divine power, heaven and earth vein, and now this primordial spirit. Li Hao's power only seemed to grow, drawing all heaven and earth energy within miles, and as his aura intensified, the Buddha Lord began to realize the scope of this young warrior's potential. As the battle reached its peak, Li Hao's golden eyes shone with an unstoppable silver radiance, his transformation nearing completion, and the path to immortality within his grasp. Just as the Buddha Lord's primordial spirit soared toward him like a divine judgment, a newly forged primordial spirit burst from the crown of Li Hao's head, less radiant, yet defiant. With a thunderous crack, Li Hao's spirit formed a fist, crashing into the Buddha Lord's blazing palm, alight with sun, essence, flame strong enough to erase ordinary souls. Yet Li Hao's spirit recoiled, not in fear, but in fierce resolve, absorbing the sacred fire into its own form. Swelling with rising power, the Buddha Lord's eyes narrowed, stunned that a mere 16-year-old had forged not only divine power and heaven-earth veins, but also a primordial spirit. What took millennia this youth had achieved in silence, the Buddha Lord's spirit pulled back, shaken, as Li Hao's inner aura surged with no end in sight until suddenly, the power of heaven and earth for miles around was drained into him. His golden gaze ignited with silver brilliance. His transformation had reached 50%, and the heavens trembled. Li Hao's eyes blazed with fury as the heaven and earth vein breathed in violently, devouring surrounding forces 70% toward immortal transformation, and with a thunderous roar, his fist crashed down like a collapsing peak, burying the Buddha Lord deep into the earth, the divine light on his Xianxia dimming instantly. Descending after him, Li Hao seized the Xianxia, hoisted the silent figure into the air, and with a calm, cutting voice declared that if he were to fall into demonhood, Buddha would be the first to vanish. Then, blade in hand, his icy stare never wavered as the supreme sword slashed down, colliding with the shimmering Xianxia in a burst of violent Tao energy, unraveling the radiant mist into graying threads, prompting the Buddha Lord, unfazed yet darkened in gaze, to finally admit all had underestimated Li Hao, vowing with rare killing intent to eternally suppress this challenger who dared to fracture his world-saving vision. And as his calm divine aura vanished, an overwhelming demonic surge burst from within the Xianxia, dark and merciless, with howling specters echoing across heaven and earth. A shadow cloaked in demonic chi emerged, wild-haired and ruthless, sneering at the serene figure once known as the Buddha Lord. It mocked him coldly. See? In the end, you still had to lean on me. You're weak! And trying to save these fools? Even weaker. As its chilling voice echoed, it scorned the sacrifices needed for so-called salvation and bemoaned how their premature exposure had cost them a near immortal ascension. Then, in a moment of dread, the figure began merging with the Demon Lord, two forces fusing into one abomination of divine and demonic will. Li Hao, standing in the radiant storm of Xianxia light and sword flashes, grew cold. Piecing together clues, he realized the horrifying truth. This was no separate being. It was the Buddha Lord's own avatar, the demonic half of his cultivation path. To reach the Four Stands realm, he had forged both Buddha heart and demonic heart, and now he was uniting them. As the fusion deepened, Li Hao's eyes sharpened with merciless resolve. So this was your greatest secret? He muttered. And with a final, decisive swing, his blade fell once more. Boom! Inside the glowing Xianxia, the Buddha Lord's eyes snapped open, cold and merciless. Demon Luo's shadow hadn't fully merged with him, yet the chill of intent was enough to freeze the air. Suddenly, his hand shot out, seizing the ultimate sword with a surge of blinding Tao energy. His voice thundered with fury, declaring that his grand ascent to the Saint Realm had been ruined and that the intruder would pay the price. Darkness coiled in his eyes as demonic chi swirled, tainting the golden light within the Xianxia. In a single heartbeat, an overwhelming force erupted, hurling Li Hao across Spirit Mountain. A colossal palm of mingled Buddha light and demonic shadow slammed down, carving a deep imprint into the trembling peak. But a fierce sword intent tore through the divine strike, splitting the palm as the golden figure rose silently above the mountain. The demon's form had vanished, fully merged with the Buddha Lord, whose radiant body now shone with pure light once more, yet his gaze was as empty and unfeeling as the void, fixed coldly on the figure below. Die, he intoned, his hand raised like a monk invoking divine judgment, yet what followed was no holy chant, but an overwhelming surge of Tao power thickening the air like the breath of fate itself. With every syllable, reality twisted, and unseen forces obeyed as boundless murderous intent stormed toward Li Hao from every direction, sealing his doom. The sheer authority of that single word crashed down like destiny manifest, and with a thunderous roar, Li Hao's body disintegrated into scarlet mist. His formidable 15-layer Tao domain utterly powerless before such crushing decree. In this devastating moment, the Buddha Lord stood not only within the Tao comprehension realm, but firmly in the Tao law realm, where law follows word and word enforces annihilation. Yet even as he gazed at the obliterated remnants of Li Hao, regret flickered in his eyes. For had his plans ripened longer and his incense firepower reached its peak, he might have soared to immortal heights in a single breath. But his ambitions, too grand for mortal patience, had been dragged into the light too soon, leaving his sacred ascension mired in exposed schemes and stirring winds that now rose like a hurricane. Heralding change too great to contain, the Buddha Lord's eyes narrowed in rare surprise as the hurricane surged below, swirling with strands of silver light so dense they seemed almost solid, fed by the frenzied heaven and earth veins drawing energy like an invisible web. At its center, the blood mist that had just been shattered now condensed with eerie determination, forming a single crimson orb that expanded rapidly, until Boom Li Hao reappeared, reborn in glowing golden red brilliance, divine and unyielding, shocking even the observers hiding in the ruins. With each breath, his aura grew, hair turning silver white as he completed his immortal transformation, his voice echoing coldly across Spirit Mountain. Tao comprehension realm. Have you ever heard attaining the Tao by dawn, one could die at dusk? In a realm where Tao law could command life and death with mere intent, Li Hao defied convention not through mystical doctrine, but with the overwhelming might of his own flesh. Unlike the Tao law's active manipulation of cosmic power, his strength surged passively, erupting from a body refined to the brink of immortality. The Buddha Lord, a master of divine power and centuries of body-forging disciplines, withstood his own terrifying form, still paled in comparison to Li Hao's ultimate world venerable body. As supreme body techniques converged within him, Li Hao approached the mythical transformed to immortal state, his strength not just healing but endlessly escalating, fusing with the heavens. In a sudden gust, he vanished, leaving a vortex of displaced air and a stunned Buddha Lord, questioning whether this was brute force or an uncanny command of Tao charm. Boom! Without warning, a massive fist hurtled toward him, crashing down with the force of a descending mountain. The blow was so powerful that it sent the Buddha Lord's body plunging toward Spirit Mountain. Before the dust had a chance to settle, Li Hao moved in an instant, charging into the chaos with unrelenting speed, shaking the very earth beneath him. The ground split open, the mountains trembled, and the structures atop them began to collapse. The Buddhist disciples, running in fear from the distant impact, could only hear the earth-shattering sounds emanating from the battlefield. In an explosive moment, the Buddha Lord was thrown into the sky, but Li Hao was already there, his leg coming down in a devastating strike. The Buddha Lord, managing to stabilize himself in midair with his immense power, unleashed a blinding golden light, sweeping across the heavens and the earth. With another 10 years, you might have been invincible, but you don't have that time, he declared, his eyes burning with a murderous intent. Having fused with the demon avatar, Demon Luo, the Buddha Lord's demeanor had shifted, shedding his previous gentleness for a cold, restrained fury, his emotions now a storm of restrained chaos. The Buddha Lord moved without warning. Die! His Tao power surged forth, laws bursting from his body, sweeping through Li Hao's 15-layer Dao domain like they were mere cobwebs. No resistance, no delay. This was the terrifying might of the Tao Comprehension realm, where laws themselves bowed before a higher order. Li Hao's body convulsed, nearly torn apart, not by brute force, but by the very essence of transcendent law. Yet even as the Buddha Lord's presence threatened to obliterate him, Li Hao didn't flinch. He stepped forward, no hesitation, no fear. Ultimate, immortal transformation. The heavens cracked open. That final 1%, the boundary between mortality and immortality, shattered. Thunder roared. Li Hao's flesh, spirit, and will merged with the world itself. Rage and killing intent dissolved into the cosmos, and from within the storm of power, a terrifying calm emerged. Once, in Dragon City Mo River, he had glimpsed this realm. Now, he claimed it. Immortal divine power ignited. The war between Buddha and demon had found its reckoning in one man, no longer bound by either. Boom! As the void cracked with a bizarre ripping sound, Li Hao casually lifted his hand like brushing away a cobweb and shattered the terrifying law of destruction without effort. His body, endlessly cycling through rebirth, remained perfectly intact, glowing with the terrifying secret of the ultimate immortal transformation, an awakening only attainable by transcending the three immortal extreme realms. The once dominant Buddha Lord froze, his murderous gaze faltering into stunned confusion. How could a cultivator of the Four Stands realm emit an aura that made even his soul tremble an aura loftier than saintly heights? Before the thought settled, whoosh! Li Hao vanished. The Buddha Lord's pupils shrank, frantically scanning every direction. He could perceive Taoist trajectories, but Li Hao left no trace, no charm, no signature. It wasn't teleportation, it was something else entirely. Pure, raw, speed. Impossible? Bam! A roaring shockwave like a divine thunderclap cracked through the air as Li Hao's blow tore through space itself, slamming into the side with blistering force. The radiant Buddha power that once shimmered around the Kasaya was instantly pierced, utterly shattered by that single strike. In a flash of rainbow light, centuries of sacred defense were demolished. The Buddha Lord reeled, thrusting forward with a palm strike while tucking his head. But Li Hao's fist crashed through it like paper, blasting it backward into Spirit Mountain. And yet, Li Hao wasn't done. His form blinked across the battlefield, relentless, uncatchable, great brightness, skill. Roared the Buddha Lord, his fury igniting a radiant surge of Tao power, forming a brilliant celestial barrier. But even that luminous defense couldn't fully resist Li Hao's punch smashed into it, meeting a sponge-like resistance. It compressed, bent, absorbed, and then snapped back. The recoil slammed into the Buddha Lord himself, blood of gold spraying forth as his eyes filled with disbelief and fury. One more move, one more breath. If Li Hao's step had carried a trace of Taoist hesitation, he would have been severed in that very moment. Li Hao moved like a phantom, his teleportation leaving no trace, sending shivers down even the most composed hearts. The great Tao's laws, vast and heavenly, seemed powerless before him, that faint aura around him cutting through divine order like paper. The Buddha Lord's eyes flared with fury as he realized the sacred doctrines had failed. Only his indestructible Tao power kept him from collapse. Faced with an enemy beyond Tao comprehension, the Buddha Lord roared, calling upon the heavens for strength, his voice echoing across realms. In a blinding blaze of Buddha light, his massive law manifestation emerged an immense figure with stars spinning in its half-lidded eyes, casting down cosmic judgment. With a flash, the Buddha Lord vanished, reappearing inside the manifestation's chest, becoming one with this towering entity. At once, the veins of heaven and earth pulsed behind it, siphoning energy from the surrounding peaks, all channeling into the colossal Buddha, his ultimate form now revealed, the battlefield shaking with transcendent might. Amitabha, Amitabha. As the colossal Buddha law manifestation towered into the heavens, the disciples of Mount Wuliang trembled in reverence and fear, bowing while chanting for divine protection. Li Hao's gaze pierced upward, eyes wide with awe. This so-called Buddha Lord, a so-called prodigy, had indeed reached the terrifying Four Extremes realm, even achieving the rare heaven and earth law manifestation, which demanded a spiritual breadth rivaling an ancient sage. But as the manifestation's cold, pitiless eyes opened with deadly intent, Li Hao answered with his own towering spirit form, merging with it in an eruption of heaven and earth power. His figure surged with divine force, the manifestation around him cracking and steaming from the overwhelming might, as if divine flames were ripping reality apart. Two titans, one clash, and no room left for mercy. Before his opponent could react, Li Hao's figure blinked into existence, his fist crashing straight into a stunned face cloaked in sacred brilliance. The Tao power of the so-called Buddha Lord surged up to shield him, but the next instant, it quivered, slamming back into its source and scattering with a violent burst. The Tao power itself wasn't destroyed, no, it was the one behind it who was extinguished. With the fall of that lofty figure, the sacred force dissolved like mist. A flurry of blows followed, rapid and fierce, stopped only by the remnants of Tao power, yet the sheer force behind them, empowered by the half-step invincible fist and ultimate immortal transformation, shattered the body even without direct contact. Amidst the fragments, a faint will trembled out, a final word, dead. But it wasn't over. The surrounding laws rushed in, attempting to anchor what remained, only to be torn apart as Li Hao raised his hand. From within him surged a pure strand of immortal divine power, born from his ultimate immortal transformation. A force beyond realm and reason. It was this alone that allowed him to overcome the impossible, to silence the Buddha Lord whose authority should have been unassailable. Before he could even react, Li Hao materialized like a phantom, driving his fist into the opponent's face, shattering the calm with a storm of fury. Though layers of Tao power surged to shield the Buddha Lord, they trembled and turned inward, detonating his form in an explosion of essence. The Tao wasn't destroyed, it was dispersed because Li Hao didn't erase the power, he obliterated its master. With that, the sacred might unraveled and scattered into the world. Fists thundered forth again, blocked by divine resistance. Yet the sheer force behind the half-step invincible fist, fused with the ultimate immortal transformation, unleashed shockwaves so violent they pulverized the opponent's body without direct contact. Even as a faint consciousness clung to the shattered remnants, the world reacted, laws descended in solemn judgment. But with one sweep of his hand, Li Hao summoned a strand of immortal divine power, tearing through the heavenly decrees like paper, his transformation merging him with the universe itself. This single pure force granted him the ability to overcome what should have been invincible, turning a battle of impossible odds into a moment of irreversible fate. The Tao power overshadowed everything Li Hao had known, marking a profound transformation. Though Li Hao could easily dominate others within his realm, the sheer magnitude of Tao power rendered him like a mere infant in comparison. The difference was stark, like the contrast between the ever-flowing water and the unyielding stone. No matter how ferocious the water might be, it could never break the stone. The higher the cultivation, the more pronounced the gaps between realms became, with each level making it harder to transcend. Early on, a warrior in the Power Passage realm could defeat those in the Zhoutian realm, even contend with the Soul Succession realm, using treasures and divine weapons. But as one ascended, the change between realms grew ever more immense. While it was still possible to surprise someone in the Tao Heart realm with a sneak attack, once one entered the Tao Comprehension realm, everything shifted. Only through extreme cultivation could Li Hao transcend these vast chasms. As he gazed upon the fallen Buddha Lord, his voice rang cold and decisive, confronting the aftermath of the Buddha's own machinations. You lured me here, and your goal was achieved. Are you satisfied now? The 2,000 years of incense fire, unspent, now lay in ruins. The Buddha Lord's voice trembled as he lamented the boundless suffering of the world, admitting his own powerlessness. But Li Hao's gaze sharpened, his presence darkened, and his primordial spirit surged forth with unwavering intent. He questioned the Buddha's doctrine. If there were no Buddha, would demons exist? If the other shore didn't exist, could the sea of suffering even be named? Should compassion mean forsaking the weak for some grand design? His words struck like cold lightning, challenging the Buddha's claim to righteousness. Realizing escape was futile before a cultivator wielding a primordial spirit like his own, the Buddha Lord could only sneer wearily. He murmured that the true essence of Buddha's teachings was beyond Li Hao's grasp. Only those truly suffering deserve salvation, not those who embrace suffering by choice. With that, he fell silent, too burdened to argue further. How many extreme realms have you mastered? he asked, eyes flickering with turmoil. 2,000 years of careful cultivation, incense fire offerings, and sacred plants, all undone by a youth who'd walked a decade's path with unmatched brilliance. It wasn't just defeat, it was disillusionment. The sacred flame he'd nurtured to ascend as a saint now burned hollow. But Li Hao only scoffed, his silence more cutting than words. Buddha or demon, let the world decide, he thundered, exposing betrayal, collusion with demons, manipulation through noble houses. The sacred turned into a tool for profit. You forced my hand to break Dayu's laws. If I sever ties with the divine dynasty, will your followers still call you righteous? No answer came. The Buddha Lord fell silent, not silenced by argument, but by truth. If he had won, perhaps his actions could be painted holy. But now, cornered and unmasked, he could only murmur a final charge, impetuous, disloyal, lawless. And yet, those words echoed power, not shame. For in Li Hao's defiance burned the fury of justice unmet. No matter how dazzling one's talent, what use is it if the path ends in silence? Though he had reached the grand Tao of Peace Realm, even striking at the Tao Comprehension Realm, without incense fire, the threshold of sainthood remained forever barred beneath the saint. All were mere insects. But he wasn't alone in that fate. His enemies sneered, declaring him just the tallest among ants, doomed to burn into nothingness. Then, the clash began. The Buddha Lord's primordial spirit erupted in blazing brilliance, lashing out at Li Hao's spirit in a cataclysm of divine radiance. Yet Li Hao, wielding a sliver of immortal divine power sharper than any blade, countered with spectral fists and bladed strikes, each blow tearing through the Buddha Lord's essence. Sun, moon, even the laws of the world trembled before that power. The sacred flame faltered, flickering like a candle in the wind, and with a final roar promising eternal vengeance from the Mo River, the Buddha Lord's spirit burst apart, shredded and scattered like dust among the stars, vanishing into the vastness of heaven and earth. As golden flames bloomed across Li Hao's primordial spirit, the scattered sun essences merged into his core, radiating newfound might. The once revered Buddha Lord, worshipped for millennia across 19 provinces, crumbled at Li Hao's feet, unable to cross the threshold into sainthood. Beneath the crushing weight of the 15-layer Tao domain, Li Hao glimpsed something few ever could, the faint residue of a soul slipping not into oblivion. While considering the idea of stacking more Tao domains to perceive that elusive Jian, Li Hao's thoughts flashed, could this power even cut off someone's reincarnation entirely? With each ascension, his mastery intensifies. Under the overwhelming force of the 15-layer Tao domain, even the threads of fate become tangled, obscured. Bodhisattvas who should have been able to defy destiny find their chances crushed. Ji Yun-Ge once claimed that in the Tao Comprehension realm, fate could be blurred, and even the sure survival of the defying fate realm means nothing before it revealing the vast chasm separating the realms. But Li Hao regrets one thing: it all happened too fast. The Buddha Lord vanished, perhaps sealed in a Mo River, or worse, already reincarnated. If reincarnated, the karma of his past is erased. And if the ancient records are right, no one has ever returned with their memories intact. Li Hao's gaze flickered coldly. This so-called Buddha Lord, once a beacon of reverence in the mortal world, had returned to silence. What remained on the ground was a blur of shattered essence and dimming flesh, far from the might of one who could have survived had he reached the three immortal extreme realms. Li Hao retrieved the torn Kasaya, once luminous, now dull, yet still radiating power that surpassed even the Saint-Heart treasure he had seen before. He tucked it away, planning a future visit to the 10,000 Artifacts Tower to gauge its true level. After all, this garment alone had rendered even Peace Realm forces powerless, a laughable exaggeration if it weren't real. Crushing the remaining remnants into mist with a palm strike, he unearthed a golden relic gleaming with potent force, but beside it lingered a dark, corrupted chi, traces of Demon Luo's aura. The attempted union of Buddha and demon had failed to fully manifest. A madman trying to leap into sainthood in one stroke, and almost succeeding, Li Hao mused, eyes narrowed. The fallen figure, older yet shockingly ambitious, had indeed chased after transcendence. The relic pulsed like a divine pill, brimming with power, but Li Hao, unmoved, tossed it into his heaven and earth space. His cultivation had already long surpassed the need for such things. As Li Hao's Dao domain collapsed inward, encasing his body like a blazing cocoon, its shrinking range intensified the force within, severing all ties to the heavens and the earth. The storm of power faded, and the divine light receded. Li Hao's form descended from the edge of immortal transcendence back into mortal stillness. The chaotic forces of the extreme realm dispersed, and with a flick of thought, he summoned fresh garments from the fractured heaven-earth space. Gazing upon the devastation, he found Spirit Mountain shattered, its sacred laws long dissolved, and the surrounding peaks warped by echoes of the clash. In an instant, he appeared before the fallen deity, Candle Flame God, and there lay Feng, crushed senses, ruined form, barely clinging to existence. A flicker of torment crossed Li Hao's eyes as he asked Xian, "Is there truly no salvation for him?" Her voice trembled. The venom inside him is terrifying. Draw it out, and his body might collapse into dust. Li Hao's expression turned cold, shattered by fury. Who could have imagined such sinister poison hidden beneath the robes of sanctity? No one could have foreseen that even the cruel poison pill capable of sealing divine blood was a secret brewed in these sacred lands. But hesitation had no place here. "Then I will defy fate for him," came Li Hao's thunderous vow. With unyielding resolve, he poured his cultivated life-defying power into Feng's broken body, igniting hope where none dared remain. Jian gasped in disbelief while Li Hao, calm and silent, poured the mysterious life-defying power into the broken form of Feng Boping. From afar, Zhang Lycan raced over, sword in hand, his face lit with awe after witnessing Li Hao's jaw-dropping clash with the Buddha Lord, a battle that cracked open his worldview. He never imagined that Li Hao, once so restrained during their sparring, had massed such terrifying strength. In truth, he wouldn't have even qualified to lift his blade inside that overwhelming Dao domain. But just as his excitement peaked, his joy flipped to confusion when he saw Li Hao channeling power into Feng. "Huh? What are you doing?" he shouted, dumbfounded. Li Hao gave no reply, focused entirely on the transference. As the life-defying power seeped into Feng and vanished into realms unseen, the battlefield stirred. Residual forces from his fierce clash with the Buddha Lord now gravitated toward the shattered Spirit Mountain. But instead of gathering around Feng, they streamed toward the ruined Buddhist hall. Fixing his gaze, Li Hao's consciousness scanned the area, and beneath the splintered purple-gold lotus platform, he discovered a mysterious, ancient wooden box. Li Hao pulled the wooden box close and opened it to reveal 3 perfectly rounded golden pills, their glow reminiscent of sacred relics. A sudden surge of faith swept over him. This was the response of life-defying power, and these pills held the key to restoring Feng's broken body. Without hesitation, he gave one to Feng, watching as golden light flowed through Feng's throat and into his meridians, illuminating his chest like a radiant divine tree. As the golden brilliance spread, dark blood began to seep from his wounds, only it wasn't blood, but swarms of tiny squirming insects being forced out by the light. The moment the black parasites were purged, Feng's wounds regained their vitality. The blood turned pure once more, and his body began to mend itself, even his lost senses stirring back to life. Li Hao's expression was grim as his power flared, incinerating the remaining parasites, yet preserving a few inside his heaven and earth space. "What vile kind of goo was this?" he muttered, and from his wrist, Xian's voice trembled with unease. "These bald ones always have their tricks," Zhang Liqian scoffed with narrowed eyes, unmoved by anything outside martial arts and the way of the sword. Li Hao didn't reply, his hand clenching in silence. "You really burned your life-defying chance just like that, quite generous," Jiang Liqian noted, his gaze sharpening on Li Hao. In the wake of an exhausting clash, just when the thin veil between heaven's will and mortal defiance threatened to shatter, the moment to escape through defying fate slipped through Li Hao's grasp permanently. Though Jian silently mourned his decision, she could only gently run Little Red Whisker along his wrist, a quiet comfort in the storm. Meanwhile, Feng Boping's broken body knit itself back together, his features gradually reforming, but something was missing. Though physically whole, he stared at Li Hao with a blank, dazed gaze familiar, yet distant. Li Hao, voice thick with guilt, took his hand and confessed his regret for arriving too late. But Feng's only response was a hollow repetition of Li Hao's name, again and again, as if clinging to a memory slipping through the cracks of his mind. And in that chilling moment, Li Hao realized Feng wasn't all there anymore. In the aftermath of a soul-shattering clash, where survival hinged on the slimmest thread of fate, the question lingered, could one truly obscure heaven's decree at the brink of mutual annihilation? It was then, and only then, that defying fate would have offered an escape. Yet, that moment never came. Xian, though heart-heavy with pity over Li Hao's forsaken chance, could only accept the irreversible, her fingers gently brushing his wrist with little red whisker, as if easing the weight of his sorrow. Around them, conversation stirred faintly while Feng Boping's ruined form slowly mended, eyes, mouth, and breath returning, but something essential was missing. The light in his gaze flickered dimly, and as he stared at Li Hao, his look was clouded, uncertain, as if trapped between lifetimes. Li Hao, guilt-ridden, grasped his hand and whispered a sorrowful apology for the suffering endured. Feng responded in broken recognition, repeating Li Hao's name like a lost chant, his voice hollow, his soul still adrift. Alarm rose in Li Hao's heart, for what he saw in Feng's eyes was not the confusion of recovery, but the haunting emptiness of something lost forever. Feng? Li Hao stiffened, scanning Feng's condition. In a flash, no wounds, no visible damage, yet something was deeply wrong. Feng's voice came soft, broken. Li Hao, child, eyes vacant, spirit adrift. Rage sparked through Li Hao's veins. This had to be the Buddha Lord's doing, beyond even the reach of defying fate. Jiang Lichen caught sight of Feng too, puzzled. Was he always like this? Li Hao's voice growled, barely human. Number. Jiang leaned closer, sharp eyes narrowing. Looks like a case of soul loss. Li Hao's breath caught. Soul loss? Jiang nodded calmly. 3 souls, 7 spirits take 1 away. And this is what you get. Hollow, empty, lost. The truth struck deep, fury surging anew in Li Hao's heart. So, that's it, he muttered. Piecing it together, Feng had been seized by Demon Luo, hidden beneath the guise of the so-called Buddha Lord, whose sanctity was just a mask for deeper darkness. The old man clearly knew the hidden truth, and the bald one used him as bait, deliberately dragging Li Hao into a trap designed to unleash chaos and tarnish the legacy of Incense Fire. But in order to protect his own secrets, the bald schemer sacrificed the old man instead, leaving him with a shattered soul and an unhealed body. Jiang Lichen, though eccentric, swiftly unraveled the entire scheme, having once fought for the throne himself. Li Hao, sensing the accuracy of Jiang's analysis, turned toward the prince with a question burning in his mind: how could a soul be restored? Jiang revealed 2 grim options. Either let the soul regenerate slowly over endless years, like flowers reblooming from bare earth, or hunt for the missing soul fragment, possibly buried in Mount Wuliang or lost forever in the Mo River. Hearing this, Li Hao's gaze turned cold as he swept over Spirit Mountain. His voice low but fierce. Feng must rest for now, because he swore to retrieve the missing soul. Feng looked at him, confused and broken, his eyes silently pleading. Run. Now. Li Hao's heart twisted in pain as he saw the old man like this. Despite his missing soul and blindness, with just 1 touch, the old man recognized him. You're safe now, Li Hao whispered, his voice soft, like he was trying to comfort a child asleep. Feng, hearing him, moved his lips slightly, showing a faint sign of understanding. The struggle in his eyes slowly faded, replaced by a smile. But without his soul, the smile looked almost foolishly joyful. Good. Unable to bear the sight any longer, Li Hao called upon the Candle Flame God to look after Feng, then used his divine thought to search every corner of Spirit Mountain. Meanwhile, outside the mountain, disciples, arhats, and protectors from Mount Wuliang arrived, stunned by the destruction before them. The shattered Spirit Mountain, especially the destruction of the Buddha Lord's Dharma aspect, left them in disbelief and fury. Despite knowing the invader was terrifyingly powerful, their deep-rooted faith overpowered their fear. Who dares invade our Mount Wuliang? This is Dayu territory. Do you want to face the wrath of Dayu? Their angry shouts echoed in the air. Boom! The moment Li Hao turned his back, a radiant sword chi slashed forth with divine fury, cleaving Spirit Mountain from crown to root in a single, cataclysmic strike that stunned every witness. The sacred peak, long revered as a bastion of faith, crumbled its very essence, shattered like the illusions it upheld. His sword chi surged into the lava pool below, purging it of every hidden demon, while the once glorious spirit gathering array collapsed into silence. No longer a holy land, Mount Wuliang stood broken, its sanctity torn asunder. As his voice echoed like thunder, Li Hao declared the end of the Buddha Lord, the fall of Mount Wuliang, and issued a final ultimatum: 10 breaths to flee or face annihilation. Panic erupted across every peak as disciples awakened to a new truth. The Buddha Lord was gone, and with him, the last illusion of righteousness. Boom! The moment Li Hao turned away, he unleashed a searing wave of sword chi that split the mighty Spirit Mountain from summit to base in one dazzling strike. An act so awe-inspiring it left newly arrived disciples frozen in disbelief, their faith cracked like the mountain itself. The once sacred spirit gathering array lay in ruins, the holy site now just shattered rock and smoldering silence. As molten light poured into the fissures, Li Hao's voice rang out cold and clear through the Brahma Pure Land. The Buddha Lord is gone. Mount Wuliang exists no more. 10 breaths, leave or fall. Terror surged across the sect's many halls as words spread like wildfire. The one who defied the heavens had declared the end of an era. Far beyond Spirit Mountain, the shockwaves of the great battle had been faintly sensed by disciples with limited cultivation, but they had no clue the Buddha Lord had already fallen. Then came Li Hao's voice, echoing like thunder across the peaks, freezing everyone in stunned silence. He spoke no more, yet above him surged a terrifying sword tide, gathering like a heavenly sea storm, its roar filled with thunder and the wrath of divine punishment. Standing atop the shattered summit of Spirit Mountain, Li Hao gazed down with icy calm, a figure like a young war god facing the world's judgment. The sky churned with spiraling sword energy, sending a wave of dread crashing through the disciples. It was as if the end had arrived. Stunned voices trembled, questioning how such devastation had come to Mount Wuliang after thousands of years of unshaken peace. Elder monks poured out from the Buddhist halls, eyes wide with sorrow and disbelief as they faced the sword tide. In panic, many young monks tore off their kasayas and fled down the mountain. Others, rooted in old faith, remained seated in solemn defiance, hands pressed in prayer, reciting ancient scripture to resist the overwhelming force. Their chants, echoing like a hymn of truth, spread through the square beneath the sword tide. But above, the sword aura expanded, spreading from Spirit Mountain to a dozen surrounding peaks as the heavens turned silent and cold, drenched in an aura of chilling finality. A tide of monks surged towards Spirit Mountain, their hearts trembling. Some stood motionless in despair, hands clasped in surrender, while others, overwhelmed by fear, discarded their kasayas and fled in chaos. The heavens whispered of an unspeakable calamity. On a distant peak, Li Qianfeng emerged from the silent Buddhist hall, eyes fixed on the ominous sword tide twisting across the sky, disbelief carved into his face. His master, once unshakable on the lotus platform, now silent, gone. The truth clawed at his mind, but the devastation of Spirit Mountain left no room for denial. Young master, hurry! The Buddha Lord has fallen! Urged a frantic monk, though clad in robes, his lineage lay with the Li family, charged with Li Qianfeng's protection. Staring hard at the figure beneath the sword storm, Qianfeng muttered, "Who did this?" A whispered name followed, Demon Luo, the shadowed nemesis of the Buddha Lord. As the old monk urgently stripped the white kasaya off Li Qianfeng and tossed him a coarse robe, he warned him to disguise himself as an outer disciple and flee the mountain, fearing that the one who silenced the Buddha Lord would not spare his disciple either. Li Qianfeng, instantly understanding the danger, changed without hesitation, cast one last glance at Spirit Mountain, and vanished into the shadows below just as Li Hao's countdown reached its climax. Without mercy, he dismissed the chanting monks before him, their desperate scriptures no match for his resolve, and unleashed the sword tide in a storm of radiance, scattering the golden body arhats into crimson mist, dyeing the fractured mountain in hues of ending temples shattered, Buddha statues cleaved, and the trembling faithful, torn between devotion and terror, either fled in chaos or clung to their chants like a last hymn at the world's edge. As the sword chi carved through stone and spirit, echoing like the apocalypse's drumbeat, boom, 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 countless streaks of sword chi sliced through the heavens, flattening peaks, tearing apart sacred halls, shattering statues, incense burners, and copper cauldrons, yet sparing the chanting monks. The earth crumbled beneath their feet as they sat untouched, eyes wide in disbelief, watching the fury dance around them. The storm of sword light faded into the sky, leaving silence in its wake. Watching this, the aloof prince mused with a hint of regret was mercy, still hiding in Li Hao's heart. Li Hao, unmoved, dismissed, needless slaughter. Wiping out the weak served no purpose. The Buddhist lineage, ancient and vast, could not be erased by a single strike. His sword wasn't aimed at the belief in peace within hearts, but at the false Buddha who had descended into corruption. He came not to end faith, but to cut away its mask. Seeing this, the prince smirked knowingly, labeling Li Hao too soft-hearted, yet conceding those without strength are unworthy of the blade. Li Hao's quiet glance in return said it all. Perhaps that's why the prince had once been caged. Li Hao's words resonated as a blunt truth. If you spoke less, your life might be much smoother. But Zhang Lishan, ever the contrarian, retorted with icy disdain. Some speak less but do much, I just tell it as it is. The ignorant masses are nothing but stepping stones for the powerful. Whether they live or die makes no difference. Li Hao, unfazed, merely shook his head and turned away. Without a word, he vanished into thin air. Outside, the mountain paths teemed with fleeing disciples, the once proud monks shedding their robes like discarded skins, scurrying away from the chaos. Among them, a ragged figure, Li Qianfeng, was hidden in the crowd, his face smeared with dirt as if he had tumbled down from the peaks. Abandoning the protection of his mansion guards, he now traveled in the company of an old monk, both inconspicuous among the masses. The peaceful scene was shattered in an instant when a single figure appeared, cutting through the fleeing throng. Power surged, toppling the panicked crowd, and fear spread like wildfire. Kneeling figures begged for mercy, their voices trembling. Li Qianfeng's face twisted in displeasure, but even he, in the face of such overwhelming force, followed the crowd's example and knelt in submission. He was the heir of the divine general mansion, the direct disciple of the Buddha Lord, destined to become the true dragon of the realm, and yet he knelt, swallowing fury like fire trapped beneath ice. His ancestors had once endured far worse for far greater causes, and so he endured too, the words of the elders echoing in his mind. A true man knows when to yield. But as he looked through the crowd, his sharp gaze sliced through illusion and landed on a familiar figure cloaked in concealment. Now that he had stepped into the Grand Tao of Peace realm, no disguise could escape him. Aren't you the Buddha Lord's disciple? Shouldn't you avenge your master? He asked coldly. Fear flickered across the young man's face. His cover was blown. The old monk beside him, once a loyal general to the fallen patriarch, yelled, "Young master, run!" and threw himself forward in protection. A thunderous clash followed. The moment the figure surged forward without yet fully igniting the Grandmaster's might, his form erupted in an instant, casting a scarlet wave that drenched Li Qianfeng mid-rise, freezing him in shock as his uplifted knee faltered and gave way. Overwhelmed, he collapsed, pleading desperately for mercy, his forehead knocking the ground in surrender. Around him, the mere mention of his name sent others scrambling backward on their knees, terror-stricken. The Buddha Lord's disciple? Wasn't that the so-called Buddha child? What kind of curse had fallen upon them to end up entangled with him? Curses flew in silence, blaming him for dragging them into disaster. But then came the cold voice, slicing through their panic. "The rest of you, get out!" It was Li Hao. His words struck like divine decree, a heavenly reprieve. Grateful and teary-eyed, the others kowtowed in haste before fleeing like startled birds. And then, silence only Li Qianfeng remained, trembling, still kneeling, gasping out, "Spare me. Though apprentice to the Buddha Lord, I am of the Li family under the divine general mansion. Our ties to Mount Wuliang are a matter of strategy, not loyalty." As Li Qianfeng's expression turned ghostly pale, panic surged through him, invoking the Divine General Mansion in a desperate attempt to ward off the approaching storm. But the calm figure before him spoke with chilling familiarity. "How is it? Don't you recognize me?" A flicker of horror lit Li Qianfeng's eyes as he finally saw past the years. Yes, it was him. So young, yet so unmistakable. "You, is it really you?" he stammered. "It seems you remember now," came the reply, just as waves of invisible force crushed down, fracturing bone and will alike. Still bound within the heavenly human realm, far from the three immortalities, no amount of elixirs could mend the damage. Yet the agony was nothing compared to the revelation searing through his mind, his master, slain by the very figure standing before him. "You? How is it possible?" he rasped, a scream torn between disbelief and dread. The one he most sought to eliminate had already changed everything. How much time had slipped away since that fateful battle, and yet Li Hao, the very one once deemed an outcast, had truly brought down the one he revered above all. That was the Buddha Lord. To Li Qianfeng, his master stood as a spiritual titan, second only to the Li family's revered ancestor. How could such a towering figure fall before Li Hao's blade? "Impossible! Absolutely impossible!" he howled, his voice drenched in disbelief and blood. Crimson tears spilled as his shattered organs twisted in pain, but deeper still was the agony of his pride unraveling. Once hailed as a celestial prodigy, he now knelt before a truth too cruel to bear. Gasping through blood and broken spirit, he stared at the youth who had destroyed his beliefs. If he was heaven's chosen, then what was Li Hao? A calamity incarnate? "My master was the second strongest beneath the heavens. No one could defeat him but that true person," he cried out, clinging to madness. But Li Hao responded only with silent judgment, crushing his limbs and sealing him within the heaven and earth space. Once a resolute child practicing swordplay in a quiet courtyard, Li Qianfeng had risen to brilliance only to fall into despair. Perhaps everything had changed the moment that noblewoman fed him the poison pill. After a brutal battle, Li Hao finds himself at a turning point, having left the Divine General Mansion and severed ties with his past. Everything began with a single pill. Now, it ends in the aftermath of that same choice. Returning to the side of the candle flame god, Li Hao finds that while his soul remains scattered, his body is untouched. "Let's go back," he murmurs, taking one last glance at the ruins of Spirit Mountain, scarred and shattered from the fierce battle. Mount Wuliang is now a shadow of its former self, and without the Buddha Lord, any future efforts to resurrect its power will be futile. As Li Hao prepares to leave, a figure approaches swiftly, and it's none other than his second uncle, Li Muxiu, who has traveled from afar after noticing the chaos. Upon reaching the outskirts of the Brahma Pure Land, he witnesses the destruction and quickly realizes the gravity of the situation. Shocked by the sight of the split Spirit Mountain, he calls out to Li Hao, "Where is the Buddha Lord?" He had discarded his position and rushed forward, determined not only to save his mentor, but also because he suspected that once the word spread, reinforcements, especially Li Hao, would likely show up as well. Although he recognized Li Hao's strength, he knew the Buddha Lord was far more mysterious, and with Li Hao now holding a prestigious position, it pained him to think of his struggles and the potential damage to his reputation. He hoped to use his own power, the half-step invincible Tao realm, to free his mentor, fulfilling the promise made. If they couldn't share glory, they would share life and death. When Li Hao revealed that the Buddha Lord was dead, Li Muxiu was shocked, realizing the enormity of the situation. He turned to look at his mentor's condition, only to find his soul was missing, deepening his distress. Li Hao, sensing his turmoil, assured him that he would find the missing piece of Feng's soul, but urged him to leave as it was too dangerous for him to stay. Li Muxiu, overcome with guilt, admitted that all of this should not have fallen on Li Hao's shoulders, but rather his own. Li Hao stood with a heart heavy with regret, burdened by the weight of failure. Twice now, he had failed to save his brother, once in Dragon City, and again now. Despite his carefree demeanor, his life felt hollow, marked by unfulfilled promises. "Because of me, Feng has been targeted by the Buddhist sect," he confessed, knowing the responsibility was his to bear. Li Muxiu tried to comfort him, offering words of solace, but it did little to ease the turmoil within. As Li Hao recounted the details of the incident, Li Mushu's expression darkened with concern. The followers of the Buddha Lord are too many. Your actions might bring dire consequences. But Li Hao smiled, undeterred by the looming danger. Li Mushu, seeing the resolve in his eyes, suggested, "Why not return to the safety of the Divine General Mansion? With its legacy, we can protect you." But Li Hao shook his head, his gaze distant. "If His Majesty decides to strip away these honors, I would simply return to a simpler life, with food and chess, unaffected by such titles." A small smile escaped him as he bid farewell, mounting the candle flame god and set off for home, resolute in his own path, unaware of the storm his actions had set into motion. After securing victory, Li Hao finds himself at a crossroads, facing a loss according to the Buddha Lord's design. News of the events would undoubtedly reach the imperial capital, and though the elderly ruler's response is uncertain, one can expect great sorrow and challenges ahead for him. Li Hao, though resolute in his departure, couldn't help but feel a pang of regret for the trouble his actions would inevitably cause. Meanwhile, Jiang Licken, ever the unpredictable character, bids farewell with a mocking laugh, alluding to the growing boldness of Li Hao's lineage. Li Mushu, silently observing the scene, couldn't shake the melancholic thought of whether the three of them would ever stand united in the shadows again. Time, relentless and unforgiving, marches on, leaving no room for second chances. Amidst the chaotic ripple of Mount Wuliang's fall and the abduction of the thief saint, shocking news spreads quickly, stirring panic even in the Divine General Mansion. What seemed like a straightforward act against a criminal sect has now evolved into something far more complicated, triggering a profound shift in the spiritual and political landscape. In the blink of an eye, the revered Buddha Lord had fallen. And to make matters worse, it happened on Spirit Mountain. The audacity of this act was incomprehensible. Soon, Li Mushu returned to the Divine General Mansion, once planning to abandon everything to save the thief saint. But, with Li Hao already handling the situation, there was no need for him to follow through with his original intentions. The mansion needed his protection. As he arrived, everyone immediately questioned his involvement, aware that Li Mushu had been determined to intervene. Despite their warnings, no one could change his mind. He could only offer a bitter smile in response, admitting his lack of power in such matters. Without hiding anything, he briefly explained the truth of the situation. Li Hao's actions had caused such an uproar that the truth was impossible to conceal, and a quick investigation revealed it all. Shock and disbelief filled the room as Li Mushu's words sank in. How could it be that Hao had killed the Buddha Lord, and how could he be connected to the notorious thief saint? Li Mushu's words were so shocking that, if they hadn't come from him, they would have been dismissed as a mere joke. The crowd struggled to believe their ears. Among them, Li Tiangang had a sudden realization. He remembered the thief saint he had encountered at Heaven's Gate Pass, the same one he had driven away without making a fuss. No one else knew that Li Hao had already made an alliance with the thief saint. When Li Tiangang uttered Hao Ji Qingqing's face turned pale. As his wife, she understood the immense influence of the Buddha Lord and the far-reaching anger of billions of Buddhist followers, many of whom held influential positions in the court. The Buddhist community had deeply woven itself into the fabric of the government, and even the imperial family had to show respect when visiting Mount Wuliang. What seemed like a minor Jianghu power had, in truth, become a major political force. I knew it, Ji Qingqing thought. He was bound to cause a massive disaster one day. Li Tiangang clenched his fists, his face twisted in regret. If I had known this would happen, I should have ended that thief's life at the border, he muttered, eyes darkened by frustration. I was weak, thinking of the past kindness. If I had been heartless back then, we wouldn't be in this mess now. He could barely contain the self-blame, haunted by the thought that even if he had gained a bad reputation for killing the thief saint, it would have been better than facing the consequences today. The others were left speechless, their gazes shifting between him and each other, stunned. Li Tiangang, unable to bear their scrutiny, turned his eyes towards Li Mushu, resentment flickering in his gaze. Li Mushu caught the look, and his expression faltered. Slowly, he turned away, realizing that Li Tiangang was blaming him for bringing Feng Boping into Li Hao's life, which had led them here. Ji Qingqing, pale and silent, couldn't hide her mixed emotions. Though Li Hao had left the Divine General Mansion in shame, seeing him rise to prominence brought her a bittersweet relief. She knew, despite the mansion's rejection, Li Hao could have a good life on his own. But now, it seemed all of his hard-earned achievements might be ripped away from him. A third-ranked duke might hold a significant title, but it paled in comparison to the influence of the revered Buddha Lord. Even Li Tiangang, with his esteemed second-rank status, couldn't stand against the Buddhist community's power. Despite holding no official court position, the Buddha Lord's religious sway was undeniable. How could Hao act so recklessly, betraying us for a thief? Li Xuanli's voice trembled with sorrow, realizing that despite Li Hao's noble deeds and status, his fate seemed sealed. He Jianlan's eyes filled with sorrow, her voice soft. That child always reciprocated kindness. It's in his nature. With determination, Zhang Xianer declared, I will travel to the imperial capital to seek aid from my elder brothers, to appeal to the emperor on his behalf. Li Xuanli opened his mouth to speak but remained silent, knowing their only hope was his majesty's mercy. Considering Li Hao's past sacrifices in saving Liangzhou and Qingzhou, I used to believe I was too harsh on him, that I misjudged his actions, Li Tiangang muttered, regret evident in his tone. But now, the mistakes he's made are too great to cover up. His fist clenched as he ground his teeth, his voice laced with frustration. He's gifted, but the more powerful he becomes, the greater the risks he takes. Tensions rise as family loyalty is questioned, and bitter words fly between the Li family members. Li Tiangang, unable to let go of past grudges, lashes out at He Jianlan, blaming the family's downfall on Hao's actions. He Jianlan defends him fiercely, arguing that without Hao, Qingzhou would have faced destruction. Despite the praise, Li Tiangang cannot accept that his son could have done better. Their heated exchange reveals deep wounds as He Jianlan challenges Li Tiangang's authority, reminding him that he was absent in Hao Er's upbringing. Amidst the growing conflict, Li Mushu steps in, suggesting that instead of arguing, they focus on asking the emperor for mercy on Hao Er's behalf. The family, torn between pride and a desperate need for unity, must now work together to ensure Hao Er's survival. Li Tiangang glared at his second uncle, Li Mushu. Despite his respect for him, the repeated support of Li Hao, even to the point of introducing him to the thief saint, had soured his feeling. Li Mushu had not only compromised his own morals, but had set a bad example for Li Hao, stirring deep resentment within Li Tiangang. Yet, despite the tension, he chose to hold back. Gao Qingqing, ever the strategist, suggested that the ancestors' heroic spirits as founding divine generals would need to intervene to preserve their family's honor. But her words came with a heavy weight of concern. She knew such a decision could risk the Li family's 1,000-year legacy. The room fell silent as everyone exchanged glances, the tension palpable. Finally, Li Mushu spoke, agreeing with the plan, his gaze briefly shifting between Li Tiangang and Li Xuanli. Li Xuanli, now burdened with the weight of his title as True Dragon, hesitated. The pressure was immense, and he couldn't afford to make a wrong move. In the midst of this, Ji Qingqing's tears flowed as she pleaded with him. Nearly kneeling before him, Li Xuanli's face softened, and he quickly moved to stop her, his voice gentle but firm. Younger sister-in-law, please don't. Li Tiangang urgently intervenes, urging his wife to reconsider her stance, emphasizing that the situation with Hao Er isn't as simple as it seems. His older brother, despite his cold demeanor, acknowledges the delicate situation and promises to take matters into his own hands. Meanwhile, emotions run high as others, including the fiery Wang Xiangru, clash over Hao's fate, questioning if the family's honor should be sacrificed for one who seemingly lost to madness. However, Li Mushu's words bring a touch of accountability into the heated debate, reminding everyone that debts of life and loyalty run deeper than petty grudges. In the end, Li Tiangang, driven by a sense of duty, heads towards the ancestral hall, determined to speak to the elders before the situation spirals beyond control. His arrival is tense, marked by the swift, ceremonial motions of bowing and presenting the dire news, signaling the beginning of a crucial confrontation that could change everything. In the ancestral hall, Li Tiangang bowed his head to the ground, desperate, as the ancestral spirits whispered in the air. The roots of Mount Wuliang were deep, and even the bravest dared not provoke it. Yet, the youth who once left the Li family had slain the revered Buddha Lord, shaking the very foundations of their world. The spirits, divided, debated whether to intervene, their voices echoing through time. Finally, the ancient figure of Li Tianyuan, the family's greatest ancestor, emerged. With a heavy heart, he declared that no intervention would come for the errant child. Despite all efforts, including the sacrifice of his divine soul to forge a true dragon soul, the young man had chosen to leave the family behind. He is no longer one of us, Li Tianyuan said solemnly, his voice cutting through the air. Li Tiangang, shaken to his core, could only stare in stunned silence as the weight of the family's decisions settled upon him. Li Hao, once a loyal heir to the Li family, finds himself disillusioned, breaking all ties after realizing the depth of betrayal within his own bloodline. His heart is heavy with regret and a thirst for vengeance after his mentor is captured and tortured by the powerful forces of Mount Wuliang. Fueled by anger, Li Hao confronts the Buddha Lord, uncovering a dark conspiracy in a hidden demonic avatar, Demon Luo. His actions ignite a fierce conflict that shakes Spirit Mountain to its core, where Tao domains clash and the very nature of righteousness is questioned. In the midst of this chaos, Li Hao undergoes a profound transformation, unlocking his ultimate immortal transformation, which shatters illusions of saintly virtue, leaving him to confront the consequences of his choices. As Li Hao stands at the crossroads between divinity and demonhood, he faces an uncertain future, one fraught with enemies both mortal and demonic, and the weight of his actions threatening to unravel the stability of the entire divine dynasty. Li Qingzheng stood frozen, his face shifting into a deep sorrow, his laughter bitter and mocking as his eyes glistened with a hollow sadness. Far away, outside the boundaries of Dayu State, within a hidden stretch of mountain, a thick mist blanketed the land, and human presence was a rarity. Two figures appeared as if from nowhere, silently descending into a secret hall perched atop a mountain peak. One was a youth draped in black robes, whispering, "The Buddha Lord, the one who sought our cooperation before. He's dead." Beside him stood a lady adorned with purple patterns on her cheeks, the same desolate gods that had been seen outside Qingzhou City. Before them knelt a massive, hunched old man resembling a boulder, clutching a dark, curved cane that seemed to have a life of its own, its twisted surface marked by a human face that occasionally twisted into a sinister grin. The old man's drooping eyes flicked to the youth, his voice gruff as he asked, "Is the news confirmed? What of Demon Luo?" The youth nodded. The message came from the Tianji Palace Master himself. It's no mistake. Demon Luo is dead as well. We went to investigate and found traces of lingering demonic chi and fading Tao power. The old man observed with narrowed eyes as the revelation sunk in. "So, he merged with the Demon Luo?" he mused, his voice carrying the weight of a truth that was both unsettling and inevitable. "You mean he was slain after entering the Tao comprehension realm?" The question lingered, as if trying to piece together an impossible puzzle. The purple patterned lady spoke with quiet seriousness, her gaze sharp. If the assailant truly killed the Buddha Lord after he fused with Demon Luo, without giving him a chance to escape, then the one behind this must possess strength at the Tao Law realm. The black-robed youth, his face etched with concern, nodded. "When we battled him before, he was at the Four Stands realm. We couldn't have been mistaken, his cultivation was clear. After all, he's only 16. It seemed impossible that he could hide such power. But then, his expression shifted, as if a deeper understanding was dawning on him. It's possible. Our fight pushed him to his breakthrough." The purple patterned lady shook her head. "But that doesn't seem likely." Only a few days had passed. The atmosphere grew tense, the pieces of a dangerous mystery starting to align. The old man walked slowly, leaning on his cane, lost in thought. "It's difficult to say," he murmured. "An extraordinary being can't be judged by ordinary standards. Geniuses defy imagination. A single day of their cultivation could be like a year for others." He paused, gazing ahead. To truly understand the Tao, what does it mean to comprehend it? Without enlightenment, even 1,000 years would amount to nothing. But with it, one could transform overnight. The two cloaked figures listened in silence. They knew that merely peering through the door of knowledge for a century wouldn't reveal the secrets inside. Crossing the threshold is the hardest part. Reaching the Tao comprehension realm isn't just about years of hard cultivation. Some, they've heard, comprehend the Tao before they even begin their cultivation, advancing in a single day as others might in 1,000 years. It's a shame, though, the woman with purple patterns remarked, her voice tinged with regret. The Buddha Lord was too greedy. Had he joined forces with us, even with his power, the Saint Heir wouldn't have escaped Mount Wuxia. But no, he chose to be cautious, using only Demon Luo to contact us, afraid of being tainted by our association. In the end, his death was justly deserved. The black-robed youth spoke, acknowledging that it wasn't about reputation, but likely the man's caution toward them after they entered Mount Wuxia. He couldn't rest easy. The lady with purple patterns scoffed, raising an eyebrow. So, without the Buddha sect's backing, does that mean our plan changes? She asked. The old man with the cane hummed in thought, but before he could respond, a disturbance rippled through the air. The old man immediately bowed, his expression shifting. "Greetings to the Saint Heir," he said. The two black-robed figures reacted quickly, looking toward a small temple within the secret hall. A young man dressed in a silver-white robe appeared, radiating an aura of holiness and nobility, his silver eyes flickering with endless light. "Greetings to the Saint Heir," they exclaimed, scrambling to kneel. The young man, indifferent and disdainful, spoke with a tone that commanded respect. "A year in the Holy Land, a decade outside. How are things progressing here?" Without allowing them to rise, he continued with a cold gaze. The three exchanged glances, and the elder gestured for the others to report. The black-robed youth, gathering his courage, began recounting the recent events. The Saint Heir then asked, "Why didn't you act immediately to kill him after he defeated your incarnations in Qingzhou?" The Saint Heir's eyes flashed with killing intent as he interrupted the youth, demanding an explanation for the Buddha Lord's death. The black-robed youth trembled, hastily offering a response. "We had planned to act, but your earlier orders to remain hidden until the major event unfolded held us back. Plus, the Buddha Lord came to us claiming he could handle the problem. But then, the Buddha sect sought to replace Taoism and insisted we cease harming the people of the 19 provinces." The Saint Heir scoffed coldly, mocking the Buddha Lord's audacity. "Using our hands and the Jiang family's resources to gather incense fire, only for him to take all the rewards. Such boldness!" The lady with purple patterns was confused, prompting the Saint Heir to snap. "What are your plans now?" The black-robed youth quickly answered. The Buddha Lord tried to ruin the young man's reputation, hoping to turn the Emperor and the court against him. The Emperor may dote on the young man, but public opinion is a powerful force. If it had worked, it would have been a bloodless way to eliminate a problem. But even though it failed, it still succeeded. With the young man now using his life as leverage and the millions of Buddhist followers rallying behind him, he's pushing the court of the Great Yu Dynasty to its breaking point. In a tense meeting, a young man in black robes suggests a plan to handle a dangerous adversary. He believes that once the young hero is scorned by millions, his connection to the Dayu Divine Dynasty will break, rendering him powerless. The key, he argues, is to avoid the young man when the time comes and neutralize him quickly. If they seek support from the Demon Kings of the Great Wilderness Heaven, the plan should unfold smoothly. However, an elegant woman questions whether such a strategy is wise, reminding them that this young man has slain a powerful being, the Buddha Lord, and might not be so easily discarded. The young man in black explains that while the mortal world respects strength, appearances matter too. He suggests that the Dayu Divine Dynasty, despite its internal hierarchies, would still be bound by the need to maintain an image of fairness, and thus, they cannot afford to fully abandon the young man. The elegant woman remains unconvinced, and though the young man says little more, his contemplative gaze reveals that the decision isn't simple. The Saint Heir, silent until now, reflects on the plan and nods in agreement, seeing its potential. The Saint Heir, cool and calculating, spoke of 100-year loan in the mortal world, after which nothing would concern him anymore. His eyes flashed with an unspoken plan, and a question rose in the air. The elegant woman, intrigued yet cautious, asked about the true power of incense fire and its promised benefits. The Saint Heir, unwavering in his confidence, pointed out that those not in the Dao Law realm couldn't fully grasp its significance. The incense fire, a mystical tool, was essential for transcending the three calamities of the Saint realm, crucial for survival beyond mere abilities. He revealed that the Jiang family's departure from the great wilderness heaven wasn't defeat, but a strategic move to revive their saint, their true ancestor. His words struck deep, leaving the woman in awe. The stakes were higher than she ever imagined, as the secrets of the incense fire extended far beyond what was visible, hinting at a much deeper and more dangerous game. The Saint Heir sneered, revealing the dark truth of a hidden plot. He revealed that the first emperor of the Dayu Divine Dynasty, a master of formations, had cleverly used mountains and rivers as his base to manipulate the incense fire, redirecting its flow to his advantage. Had it not been for his wanderings and some understanding of formations, he might have never noticed the subtle manipulation. A woman, elegantly adorned with purple patterns, asked if the true person was aware of this, to which the Saint Heir coldly responded that the true person likely knew, possibly even cooperating with the scheme. The woman was puzzled by their efforts, prompting the Saint Heir to explain that it was all part of a grand deception. If the revival of the Jiang family ancestor was done openly, someone would have intervened long ago. However, when a true person cultivates incense fire, few take notice, believing it to be a futile effort, one that would not even lead to the Saint realm. After all, even with the power of incense fire, it would still be worthless. The Saint Heir sneered coldly, his voice dripping with disdain as he spoke. 2,000 years of incense fire wasted. What a foolish waste! If that young man no longer meddles in our affairs, leave him be for now. Once I become a saint, I'll crush him with a single slap. His gaze hardened, but his cultivation's speed. It's terrifying, remarked the elegant woman with purple patterns. Didn't you hear me? To become a saint, one needs incense fire. If he breaks ties with the Jiang family, even just in name, now that his reputation is ruined, who will give him incense fire? Not the Jiang family, he scoffed. Without incense fire, his cultivation is capped. No matter how strong, he'll be forever stuck at the threshold of the Tao comprehension realm, unable to move beyond. Below saints, all are ants. He might think he's seen the truth, but he's still trapped in the well, never understanding the vastness of the heavens. With a bitter smile, he continued, time is running out for him. Don't forget, 1,000 years ago, a group entered the immortal gate to cultivate in the land of all saints. They are the true backbone of the divine general mansions. Even if they perish here, when they return, they'll rebuild everything. We don't need to challenge them, just contain them. Once the Jiang family is wiped out, we'll seize their accumulated incense firepower. The three of them exchanged bitter smiles. The elderly man with the walking stick knew it was his turn to speak. Rest assured, we will give our utmost efforts, Saint Heir. Here are 3 incense fire treasures. Absorb their power, cherish them, and do not disappoint me again. The Saint Heir flicked his sleeve, and 3 treasures appeared before them. We will not fail you again, the old man said, full of respect. The immortal gate is on the brink of opening. Act swiftly. Do not wait until it causes trouble, the Saint Heir urged, a slight agitation on his face. With that, he turned and stepped into the ancient temple, a golden light flickering in his palm. He slashed through the temple with the light, vanishing without a trace. After watching him leave, the youth in black and the graceful woman with purple patterns sighed in relief, rising quickly to collect the treasures before them. They marveled at the treasures in their hands. I heard the original Saint Heart treasure was just a hollow shell, lacking any real power. But this, the depth of its energy is profound. The elegant woman, adorned in purple patterns, gently held a jade flute, contemplating its significance. With this artifact, can we move directly towards the Gantao Palace? The youth, dressed in black, questioned, sensing the weight of the incense fire treasure before him. Meanwhile, the old man, carrying a walking stick, collected his treasure without any display of emotion, his voice tinged with irritation. If it were that simple, the Saint Heir would have already given us the treasures. The Dayu Divine Dynasty's waters run deep, and the Jiang family is more complicated than we realize. The Buddha Lord reached the Tao Comprehension realm by merging Buddha and Demon, yet he refrains from contending with Gantao Palace for one reason: he cannot win. Is that old true person truly that powerful? The graceful woman paused, directing her gaze towards the elder. They've already noticed us. Our presence outside Qingzhou City is exposed. Should we act now? After a moment's thought, the old man nodded. Let's wait for them to clash with that youth first. Have the Tianji Palace Master rally those from the Buddhist sects to pressure the Emperor. They rely on those who entered the Immortal Gate a millennium ago as their foundation. The laws of Dayu are not something that youth can defy alone. The woman nodded in agreement, signaling a brief pause before the next move in their intricate game. In the capital of Dayu, the imperial city stood in solemnity as high-ranking officials gathered for a crucial court session. News had spread from the distant Qingzhou region, a disturbance on Mount Wuliang that had caused turmoil in the most complex circles of power. The tension was palpable as many questioned the reliability of the information until it became clear. A monumental breach had occurred. The Buddha Lord, a figure who symbolized the revered Buddhist faith, and a young prodigy, whose strength and achievements had earned him admiration, were now on a collision course. The shock of their clash reverberated throughout all factions, large and small. The Buddhists, though without their leader, would not disperse easily. Their faith and cohesion were unshakable. Even centuries ago, Emperor Yu had banned royal family members from embracing Buddhism, fearing it would weaken their bloodline. Yet, the influence of Buddhism persisted among retired officials, guiding them toward inner peace. As the day unfolded, it became clear that the consequences of this conflict would not only affect the royal family's image, but could very well shift the balance of power across the land. The Buddha Lord's defeat is a devastating blow to his followers, shaking the very foundation of their faith. Outside the grand Zhuanhuang Gate, a majestic dragon horse carriage arrives, and a dignified figure steps out, none other than the head of the prestigious Xia family, someone who had long stayed away from court affairs. Whispers ripple through the crowd, speculating that the Xia family's arrival may be in defense of the legendary General Haoxian, whose heroic acts escaping the Mo River and slaying leaders of the great demonic forces have made him a figure of great interest. Alongside her, an elderly former official, known for his debates with the Buddha Lord and his vegetarian ways, arrives, adding to the growing tension of the day's court session. As powerful figures from different factions gather, the atmosphere thickens with anticipation. Inside the Imperial Palace, Emperor Yu sits on his dragon throne, his imposing presence radiating an unyielding authority. His calm, almost unreadable demeanor commands respect as the Xia family's representative, Xia Linglong, stands poised and serene before the assembly, her powerful aura undeniable. It is clear, today's court session will be a pivotal clash of wills. Xia Linglong rushed to Dayu State, fully aware of the gravity of the situation. The young man, though skilled in combat, faced an empire whose power was beyond imagination. The true person of Gantao Palace, along with the ancient Jiang family, had the strength to obliterate any threat. Even the Buddha Lord dared not challenge the established order, for such actions would lead to disastrous consequences. With the Buddha Lord now dead, the resulting turmoil in the Buddhist factions pulling in various directions posed risks. Though they weren't directly dangerous to Li Hao, they could cause significant problems for the Emperor. The Emperor, seeking a way to appease the masses, might even strip Li Hao of his titles to maintain peace. Xia Linglong knew that any rupture between Dayu and Li Hao would create an opening for demons to exploit, a scenario the Emperor would undoubtedly consider. Yet, she wasn't sure what path he would take, torn between the need to calm the public and the long-term advantages of backing Li Hao still young, yet filled with potential to surpass even the true person of the Taoist palace. But the Emperor's heart was unpredictable, and excessive power in the hands of someone so young could be seen as a threat to his rule. What would he decide? Only time would tell, but Xia Linglong hoped her family's request for caution would influence the Emperor's judgment. As the court session commenced, an elderly official, visibly emotional, spoke up. "Your Majesty, your heavenly heart sees the truth." General Haoxian's actions, defying the heavens and killing the revered Buddha Lord, are utterly lawless. He is undeserving of his title and must be demoted to a commoner, sent to guard the frontier without any official rank for life. Another official quickly added, "Indeed, Your Majesty, General Haotian has committed numerous misdeeds, from battling his father to betraying his family, and now he has murdered the Buddha Lord, causing widespread sorrow. He must face strict punishment." Yet another official spoke passionately. He cannot be allowed to act with impunity just because of his past contributions. What does it say about royal authority and morals? If left unchecked, he will become more unruly and uncontrollable. A final voice echoed with concern. "Your Majesty, General Haotian is young, misled, and has been poorly guided. Though he saved Liangzhou, his good deeds are tainted by malicious intentions. He must not be indulged, or the realm will suffer." Several other officials chimed in, all seemingly aligned in their condemnation. However, there was silence among others, who remained wary, knowing the stakes were high, with the future of the human race threatened by external forces. Xia Linglong turned her back before Emperor Yu could speak, her determination clear. She wasn't there for debate, but to shield the young man from every trial with her own strength. "You all talk like it's easy," she said with a cold laugh. "But when demons attack, how many of you would stand on the walls to fight?" Her voice cut through the air. "You speak so lightly of saving provinces, but your words are as sharp as blades, yet empty." A general rose, challenging her, his voice firm. "I'm a military leader. If demons breach my territory, I'll lead my troops as the vanguard. But we all have our contributions, don't we? If we judge lives based on merit alone, what happens to the people? If we let this kind of lawlessness spread, what kind of dynasty are we protecting? A kingdom or a den of thieves?" Xia Linglong's eyes narrowed, her gaze chilling. This man wasn't from the 5 divine general mansions, but his words carried weight. They weren't aimed at Li Hao, but at the corruption within the military system, where the powerful hoarded all the credits and achievements. She understood. The 5 major mansions had long controlled the battlefield's rewards, and while she, as a family head, didn't condone it, she knew it was impossible to stop. For smaller forces, survival was a matter of navigating this web of power, and though alliances were made in secret, everyone understood the rules. With the Emperor watching, no one dared to break them. "You speak truth," she admitted, her tone darkening. "If power means we can kill at will, where does that leave us? Fear and chaos. The dynasty may prosper for a time, but without justice, it will fall." Xia Linglong's face tightened as the ministers bickered, but she remained unshaken, knowing they had a valid point. As they debated, her thoughts drifted to the law, which was clear. If they insisted killing was a crime, the law of the Dayu divine dynasty would back them up. However, the situation was more complex. With demons ravaging the realm, the moral high ground seemed far less certain. "Have you forgotten the demons? Can you reason with them when they attack?" she retorted sharply. The ministers didn't take kindly to the implication, their voices rising in anger. "Are you comparing us to demons?" they demanded. "Are we, the followers of the Great Path, now to abandon our principles?" They insisted that even a great general like Haotian could not be excused for killing the Buddha Lord, equating his actions with that of demons. Xia Linglong, though amused by their outrage, realized the futility of trying to reason with them. The only solution left was action, though that would mean her own defeat. As the scholars debated heatedly, one voice rose above the rest. "You dare question the Haoshan general, who saved 3 provinces from the demonic threat, without even looking into the facts?" Another chimed in, challenging the accusation. "It's clear that there are hidden motives here. We should investigate their families and see if demons are secretly causing turmoil." The arguments intensified as more joined in, praising the general's merits and defending his honor. Meanwhile, Xia Linglong stood silently at the sidelines, watching the uproar unfold. Her own eloquence wasn't enough to match the overwhelming voices in the room. She glanced at the Emperor, hoping for a sign, but His Majesty remained calm, revealing nothing of his thoughts. As the bickering dragged on, a soft cough broke through the noise. All eyes turned to the Emperor as he spoke with measured calmness. "While my ministers present valid arguments, we must remember that reason alone won't sway the demons. If we strip the Haotian general of his honors now, who will stand against the demons when they attack? His words cast a long pause over the room, leaving many ministers silently reflecting, and those supporting Xia Linglong exchanged knowing glances. Emperor Yu stood in silence, his mind at odds with the chaos unfolding before him. His courtiers debated fiercely, some for, others against, the young man named Li Hao. But His Majesty remained focused, weighing the true cost of the situation. The news of Buddhism's offer 8 million disciples in exchange for fairness was enough to stun even the boldest among the court. 8 million, murmured the emperor, his calm voice betraying no emotion as he pondered the gravity of such a trade. The courtiers, once loud in their accusations, fell silent, while others recalled the earlier praise for Li Hao, once deemed worth 1 million troops. That now seemed like a pale exaggeration in comparison. The realization settled in. Could 1 million soldiers really rival what this single man had achieved? Could they protect their land, their people, or face the growing darkness? As the realization dawned, the true weight of Li Hao's legacy began to emerge. The Li family, with its 3 million elite troops, was relentlessly pushed back in Xinzhou, forced to retreat and hide in the city's protective array. But then, a young man arrived. Within a single day, he defeated the demon leader, slayed the incarnation of the desolate god, and obliterated the demon tide with one strike of his sword. Such power could not be matched by mere numbers. Despite a massive force of top generals and elite soldiers, none could rival this extraordinary force. Not even the vast Buddhist army of 8 million disciples spanning across the land. When Emperor Yu spoke of this truth, it became clear to all, compared to this young man, their might was insignificant. Xia Linglong, realizing the gap, felt a surge of awe. The Buddha Lord had fallen, and no army, no matter how large, could trade for a single Li Hao. As the denouncing minister also came to his senses, the overwhelming scale of the Buddhist forces now seemed irrelevant in the face of such overwhelming power. Despite the immense power of Buddhism, the young man stood firm, unwavering. His status had reached a level of transcendence, comparable only to the revered true person of the Gantao Palace. One official voiced his concern, warning that although the Buddhist disciples may not match his power, the youth's actions were unjust. He argued that today, he killed the Buddha Lord. Tomorrow, who would be next? Such a character, he claimed, was like feeding a tiger that would eventually bring calamity. Another minister joined in, saying that if they bowed to his strength, what would stop them from retreating before the demons? Xia Linglong, furious, could barely contain herself, her divine soul shaking with rage as she called them out, accusing them of turning a blind eye to the corruption and the flattery of Buddhism. "You all sell your honor for small gains," she declared, condemning the corrupt officials who hid their true motives behind hollow words. Some of the great scholars, outraged, saw through their cunning. Yet one of the ministers, not taking kindly to the insult, threatened to retaliate, claiming that he was a third-class marquis and should not be disrespected. A minister, furious beyond measure, bellowed with indignation. Xia Linglong's eyes flashed with a chilling intensity. Were they not in court, her instincts would have led her to strike down those speaking so foolishly with a single deadly sword. Her voice, cold as ice, cut through the air. "Are you all so blind? With the looming threat of demons still hanging over us, if you strip that young man of his honors, do you not see that he would surely rebel against the court? He is beyond saving in your eyes, but do you dare risk the consequences if he aids the demons?" Her gaze was sharp, piercing, as she continued. "And if he does join the demons, who of you dares bear the responsibility?" One minister spoke up, suggesting the intervention of a true person. Xia Linglong's lips curled into a frosty smile, yet her eyes remained an unyielding storm. "You think it's that simple? He slaughtered the Buddha Lord himself, and you talk of sending a true person to deal with him? His power is unknown, but he could very well be in the Tao comprehension realm, far surpassing even a true person. You speak as if killing him is as easy as cutting grass. I challenge you, if you truly believe this, then let His Majesty proclaim it to the world, that it was your idea to strip him of his honors. Go on, enter the Imperial City with your self-righteous confidence and see if you can even approach him." The ministers recoiled, their faces draining of color. Who would dare provoke a madman who had slain the Buddha Lord? Xia Linglong's cold words echoed, laying bare the fragility of their bravado. "And do not forget, guarding the Imperial City is your responsibility. Yet, here you are, shirking it all onto others. In a time of great unrest, the fate of the Buddhist sect hangs in the balance after the sudden and mysterious death of the revered Buddha Lord. While some argue for justice and the need to restore order, Emperor Yu remains calm and pragmatic. He questions if anyone among the Buddhist disciples can fill the void left by General Haochen in the battle against the encroaching demons, amidst the widespread drought and refugee crisis. With his composed words, he reminds his subjects that justice is meaningless without a stable world. As the debate quiets, the ministers reflect on the true weight of his statement, and Xia Linglong, along with others, secretly rejoices in the emperor's guidance. The faces of those condemning Li Hao were twisted with disdain, yet they couldn't ignore the reasoning shared by Xia Linglong and her companions. The young man's power and current status were not something to be underestimated, but under the iron hooves of my great empire, all who break the law or stir chaos shall face justice. Emperor Yu's voice suddenly grew cold, his declaration clear and unforgiving. Anyone who dares defy the law shall face the consequences according to our codes. No one is above the law, not even royalty. Those deserving of execution will be executed. Those deserving of death will die, without mercy. His words were as sharp as a blade. Merit can be acknowledged, but wrongdoings cannot be overlooked. The room fell silent as Xia Linglong and the others stared in shock, their faces paling. Meanwhile, those who had condemned Li Hao showed a brief moment of hesitation, but soon they couldn't suppress their satisfaction. Emperor Yu's gaze swept over the crowd as he solemnly added, "The Buddha Lord has been slain, and my heart mourns deeply. From this day on, I will personally lead the court in abstaining from meat for 7 days to honor the spirit of the Buddha Lord." He then vowed, "After 7 days, I shall visit the Temple of Holy Virtue and offer incense." The critics couldn't help but cheer, their voices rising in praise. Xia Linglong, her face pale, looked up sharply at the emperor. Emperor Yu observed her gaze but remained impassive as he slowly spoke. "My esteemed subjects need not worry. The Buddha Lord has immeasurable merit. I cannot allow his death to remain unresolved. I will entrust the Monster Suppression Department and the Ministry of Punishment to jointly investigate this matter. There are many doubts that demand a thorough investigation." His words echoed through the court, leaving everyone stunned. Xia Linglong's fury and disbelief had yet to escape her lips when the realization hit her. Her expression shifted as she glanced at His Majesty, realizing how masterfully he had twisted his words. Those who had earlier shouted in anger were now left speechless. What did this all mean? With so many witnesses to the Buddha Lord's murder, why was there still a need for an investigation? "Your Majesty," one voice trembled, "the Buddha Lord was murdered in front of everyone." A voice echoed in the crowd, claiming the truth was irrefutable, for many disciples had witnessed the events firsthand. Yet, Emperor Yu remained silent, his gaze cold as a minister spoke out. "Are you so certain? This case is full of uncertainties. Is seeing truly believing? Do you know the capabilities of someone from the Ping Tao realm or the demons of the Tao comprehension realm?" The minister's voice grew sharper. Even minor demons possess magic, such as blinding spells, to deceive mortals. "I trust His Majesty's wisdom in these matters." With a mocking edge, he continued, "Why would General Haochen kill the Buddha Lord for a mere thief? Does that make sense to you? If demons truly impersonated General Haochen, wouldn't that only serve to turn us against him and leave us vulnerable? Could General Haoxian have truly defeated the Buddha Lord, a being who had cultivated for 2,000 years, when Haoxian himself only had 16 years of training?" The tension in the air was palpable, as the crowd awaited a response that might reveal more than it seemed. The air was thick with tension as the accusation was made. Could General Haoxian truly be a genius of his generation? Those who had once condemned fell into an uneasy silence, their words stifled by the weight of their own hypocrisy. Xia Linglong and her companions, on the other hand, barely contained their excitement, their applause nearly bursting out as they marveled at the skillful display of rhetoric. "Justice must prevail," Xia Linglong declared boldly, her voice ringing with conviction. "If His Majesty has promised us justice, then we must act. We cannot let the death of the Buddha Lord go unresolved." The faces of those who had condemned earlier twitched in disbelief. Wasn't the Buddha Lord's death already clear? Was His Majesty genuinely calling for justice, or was this just another act of favoritism? The truth hung in the air, elusive and dangerous, as the storm of political intrigue began to swell. Emperor Yu was surrounded by doubt and suspicion, as many wondered if he truly trusted the young man who had earned his favor. The whispers in the air were thick with speculation. Did His Majesty fear the strength of this powerful figure, or was he simply too trusting? There were those who believed the Emperor's indulgence was a calculated move to avoid upsetting the delicate balance of power, even at the risk of looking weak. As the tension mounted, His Majesty finally addressed the leading elder, declaring that justice would be served. No matter who the true culprit turned out to be, Emperor Yu vowed to bring them to justice and deliver them into the hands of the Buddha Lord, unwavering in his commitment to right the wrongs that had been done. The elder's face was filled with sorrow, his body trembling weakly as he stammered, "Your Majesty, this matter. Emperor Yu, with a composed voice, responded, "I see that today's ministers are only intent on discussing this issue. If that's the case, let us end the court session for today. Do not forget, my ministers, there is drought and demon trouble across the land, and countless commoners await the court's aid. I expect your written reports by tomorrow." With those words, Emperor Yu declared the end of the session. The ministers, reluctant to leave, wished to speak further, but with the Emperor already rising and departing, their voices fell silent. Among them, doubts began to grow. Had they chosen the wrong side? Would the Emperor hold a grudge against them? Meanwhile, in the back garden of the Imperial Palace, Chu Ju Yue followed Emperor Yu as he strolled, the weight of the court hanging in the air. "This little fellow is truly troublesome. His actions are far too reckless," the Emperor sighed, casually picking a petal, crushing it gently in his hand, and tossing it into the pond. A goldfish leapt up and devoured it. As if mirroring the Emperor's thoughts, with a faint sigh, he walked through the garden, hands clasped behind his back. As they settled into the peaceful surroundings, a eunuch arrived with urgent news. A minister sought an audience with the Emperor. Emperor Yu, with a simple wave, indicated his dismissal of the matter. Understanding the unspoken command, Chu Ju Yue followed the eunuch to the garden gate, where he encountered several ministers. These ministers, once vocal in their condemnation of a certain figure, were now gathered in hushed discussion, their intentions unclear. One of them spoke, Chu, about the Buddha Lord's issue, but Chu Ju Yue quickly silenced him with a gesture. The ministers stood in surprise as Chu Ju Yue lowered his voice, warning them not to broach the subject of the Buddha Lord. He reminded them that the Emperor had a deep connection with the Buddha Lord, one forged through profound discussions on Mount Wuliang, and that His Majesty was grieving, having just presided over a court session filled with mourning. The ministers exchanged looks, unsure of what to believe. Was this truly the case? A sovereign, after all, could never act lightly. The men exchanged uncertain glances as Chu Ju Yue scowled. "What's with those looks? Do you not trust me or doubt His Majesty's loyalty to the Buddha Lord?" she asked, her tone sharp. "But the Buddha Lord's death was so clear," one of them said, but Chu Ju Yue quickly interrupted, lowering her voice. "Don't mention the Buddha Lord again. His Majesty is deeply troubled. He didn't even eat last night after hearing the news. Do you think His Majesty doesn't want justice for the Buddha Lord? Of course he does. But without proper investigation, the true culprit will escape. And is that really what you want?" The men fell silent, exchanging looks. "Let's go. We shouldn't add to His Majesty's sorrow." Chu Ju Yue waved them off, signaling for them to leave. One of the ministers hesitated and asked, "Is His Majesty truly grieving?" Her face hardened, and realizing his misstep, the minister gave a sheepish smile before leaving. Chu Ju Yue stood, watching them go, a cold smile curling on her lips. They had no idea how deeply His Majesty had loved that child. Emperor Yu, deeply burdened by grief, could barely contain his smile as he sat in a pavilion savoring pastries, reflecting on the actions of those around him. As Chu Ju Yue approached, he mused about the relentless efforts of Shanner and her brothers to defend a child whose very existence was tied to complex political tensions. The Emperor sighed, noting how Xianxia, still holding a grudge over the death of Li Junye, had nonetheless made repeated efforts for the sake of this child. Chu Yue, her words soft and measured, acknowledged Sheener's maturity, suggesting that she had come to understand the truth that the Emperor was not to blame for past events. Emperor Yu, his gaze distant and contemplative, smiled faintly, the tension in his heart easing a little as he reflected on the wild nature of the child, whose connections even reached the powerful Xia family, willing to risk offense to plead on his behalf. Chu Yue, though outwardly composed, quietly considered the delicate balance of power at play. Had the other divine general mansions joined the plea, the consequences might have been catastrophic. Yet, in the end, the Xia family's intervention was a strategic necessity. The Emperor and Chu Yue both understood that too much interference from the other factions would only deepen the turmoil, and the fragile equilibrium of the Empire could easily shatter. In the palace, the Emperor's fingers lightly tapped the table, a subtle smile curling on his lips as he pondered. He acknowledged the calm nature of the old general, whose judgment had withstood the test of battle, and remarked that at this critical juncture, he had no intention of making a move against the child. He also noted the Buddha Lord's impulsiveness, hastily aligning with demons in pursuit of Dao Tong and sainthood. But the Emperor was clear, reason prevailed, the reason of Dao, not of the Buddha. Chu Yue's eyes flickered as she quietly observed. The Emperor's awareness of the Buddha Lord's dark alliance with demons was no surprise. She remained silent, uncertain whether the Emperor would forgive the child. Despite the child's actions being a benefit, they were done with haste, too quickly for comfort, and that rapid growth became a concern, even surpassing the Buddha Lord in its potential threat. Though Chu Yue was one of the Emperor's most trusted, she could never claim to fully understand his heart. Emperor Yu, a figure renowned for his ruthlessness and decisiveness, had once displayed these very traits when he ascended the throne, following a fierce battle among the princes. His unyielding nature was clear to all, leaving no room for softness or hesitation. Yet, as the old servant Chu Yue dared to question his trust in a particular child, she found herself unable to comprehend his reasoning. Was it merely a game of chess by the Willow River that led to such unwavering faith? Or was it the child's exceptional talent that inspired hope for a future saint, one unlikely to seek the throne? Despite her doubts, she couldn't ignore the deeper questions of human nature, the struggle for power and the fragility of trust. Emperor Yu, silent for a moment, gazed at the fallen peach blossoms, their petals swirling in the summer wind, before quietly stating his intention to play a game of chess. His words lingered in the air, leaving Chu Yue with more uncertainty than answers. Emperor Yu stood, his voice calm but decisive. You don't need to follow. Tomorrow at dawn. Just say that I've been deeply contemplating the Buddha Lord and am feeling unwell. Chu Yue's eyes flickered for a moment, but she quickly hid her emotions and asked softly, But your Majesty, if the disciples of the Buddha sect are not content and cause trouble again? Emperor Yu gave her a reassuring glance. When I return, I'll have an answer, he said before vanishing into the night. Chu Yue stood alone, watching the empty pavilion, petals softly falling onto the warm stone bench, lost in her thoughts. Meanwhile, in the majestic Gantao Palace atop Heavenly Gate Mountain, Emperor Yu appeared behind an ancient Taoist, his presence like a shadow in the dimly lit secret hall. I plan on taking a long journey to see that child, Emperor Yu spoke lowly, as the room filled with an air of unspoken understanding. The Taoist slowly opened his eyes and, after a long silence, quietly asked, Have you made up your mind? Emperor Yu remained silent for a moment, then replied, I will decide after meeting him. The Taoist paused again before speaking. My time is running out. I had planned to take the Buddha Lord with me, but I didn't expect the child to solve it first, saving me the wait. Emperor Yu gave a slight nod. Initially, he had planned to wait for the Immortal Gate to reopen, to wait for the Jiang family's return to deal with the situation, and to eradicate everything thoroughly. The Buddha Lord had sensed this and was hurriedly trying to counter it by secretly weakening himself to cultivate Demon Luo. Unfortunately, he didn't act in time to catch the Buddha Lord at his weakest. He collaborates with demons, acting out of desperation, because he sensed that I had reached out to the Immortal Gate, trying to contact my uncles and others to reopen it. The Taoist continued. Sadly, in the secret realm, a year is like 10 years in the mortal world. Emperor Yu's eyes grew sharp. No one can stop my Jiang family from resurrecting the ancestor. We are so close, there cannot be any mistakes. The Taoists sighed. Their foundation within the Immortal Gate is too fragile. Whether they can build alliances with the Saints is uncertain. The reopening of the Immortal Gate will take time. In the silent chamber, the Taoist's ancient voice echoed, carrying with it the weight of countless years. He spoke of choices, of destinies tied to the future of the Dayu Divine Dynasty. Emperor Yu, burdened by the weight of 3,000 years of rule, made his decision with quiet resolve. 10 years are enough for that child, he said, an unspoken understanding passing between the two. The Taoist's words lingered in the air. I hope you have not chosen wrongly. But there was no response, only the soft promise. Wait for me to return. The Taoist, knowing the path was set, left with the heavy weight of unspoken fate. In the darkness, only a single lamp flickered, casting shadows over the quiet, uncertain future ahead. After his return to the Heavenly Gate Pass, Li Hao knew the weight of his actions, having challenged the Buddha Lord and uncovered deep conspiracies. With Feng's soul in turmoil, Ren Xianxian's tears flowed, her stoic nature giving way to raw emotion for those she cared about. Li Hao, ever the pillar of strength, comforted her, though his mind lingered on the old man in the imperial capital, knowing that a resolution was near. Despite everything, he had no resentment, as the guidance he received had shaped him. In the quiet of the courtyard, the savory scent of grilling meat filled the air, tempting even the candle-flame god and Jian to indulge. Li Hao, ever the friend, smiled, offering his long-awaited barbecue to Feng, a simple moment of peace amid the chaos of his journey. In a quiet courtyard, the scent of food and fire fills the air as an old man in a long black robe approaches the fortified city of Liangzhou. Despite his age, he walks with purpose, observing the bustling streets, full of young nobles and thriving markets, surprising for a border town. His gaze lifts to the towering walls, crowned by the fluttering Hautian flags, signaling the city's strength. With an air of authority, he enters without delay, passing unchallenged by soldiers who sense his noble bearing. As he reaches the center of the city, he arrives at an isolated courtyard, surrounded by soldiers and an imposing fence. From within, the soft sound of a flute drifts out, a reminder of the chaos that still lingers in the world. The elderly man smiles faintly, knowing the one inside remains unperturbed, continuing his music as the world around him shifts. Without hesitation, he approaches the entrance, only to be stopped. The scene unfolds with tension as the old man prepares for what lies beyond. An elderly man arrived at the gates, a visitor of significant mystery. The guards, members of the powerful 15 Li realm, tried to press for more details, but the calm yet imposing presence of the man left them uneasy, making them hesitate before nodding and signaling for his entrance. Inside, Li Hao, a young man with a sharp sense for the unexpected, immediately recognized the visitor, his surprise barely concealed. This was no ordinary guest, and the encounter, though not planned, held deep meaning. Rising swiftly to greet the elderly man, Li Hao felt the weight of their past connection, a fleeting meeting by a willow tree now bringing them face to face in this quiet courtyard. As he moved to bow in respect, the elderly man gently raised his hand, halting the formal gesture with a simple but powerful force. "No need for formalities," he said, instantly signaling that Li Hao had indeed recognized him correctly. The old man's eyes wandered around the courtyard, taking in the peaceful surroundings and the figures present the young girl practicing her swordplay. The slow-moving Feng Boping, and the dignified Candle Flame God, a being of immense power from the Great Void Realm. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken histories and the shared paths of destiny. The small courtyard was filled with all sorts of interesting objects, reflecting a world of its own. The elderly man chuckled to himself, a knowing smile playing on his lips. Li Hao stood there, slightly confused, and asked, "Elder, what brings you here?" He purposefully avoided addressing him as Your Highness, recognizing the man's desire to keep his identity hidden, especially considering the dangerous times, demons threatening the land, and the Emperor venturing so far from the capital. Li Hao's emotions were conflicted. After slaying the Buddha Lord, it was both overwhelming and humbling to have such trust shown by someone so important. "I had the itch to play a game of chess," The elder replied with a light laugh, his eyes scanning the courtyard filled with boards, zithers, and other objects. Do you spend all your days on these instead of cultivating? Li Hao thought to himself that this was indeed his method of cultivation, though it was hard to explain to the elderly man. The old man smiled, strolling through the courtyard, and commented, "Moving here must have been difficult. Has your chess skill rusted?" He paused as he noticed a young girl stopping her sword practice to look curiously at him, offering a smile in return. "It's not so bad. The Borderlands have their own beauty. It's all part of the mortal world's wonders." Li Hao gave a light laugh and invited the elder to sit, asking Ren Xianxia to bring tea. Ren Xianxia, unsure of the elder's identity, quietly followed Li Hao's instructions, bringing the tea to steep for him. Emperor Yu took a sip of his tea, savoring its sweet, wild freshness, though it didn't compare to the grandeur of the Imperial Palace's cloud mist tea. "You sure take it easy," he said with a light chuckle. Li Hao, sitting opposite him with a casual smile, replied, "The ways of the world are now familiar to me. My heart roams freely everywhere." For a moment, Emperor Yu's eyes flickered as he observed the young man, reflecting on his situation. No wonder those stubborn scholars in Hanlin Hall like you so much. Li Hao, surprised, pondered how the scholars would even know him. "Come, let's see if your chess skills have improved." "Don't just pretend," Emperor Yu said, joking as he settled into his seat. Li Hao followed suit, sitting upright with respect, ready for their quiet game. He knew that the visit wasn't just about a game of chess. It held the answer Li Hao had been waiting for. But the answer was heavier and more complex than he ever imagined. A sense of shame began to creep in. They tidied up the scattered chess pieces, and the game resumed. Li Hao took the white pieces. "Don't let me win. I don't need charity," the Emperor remarked. As he moved a piece, Li Hao responded with a smile. "I wouldn't dare." The game intensified quickly, with the white pieces pressing a fierce offensive. The formation was solid, a fortress that pushed the black pieces into retreat. Emperor Yu chuckled slightly, admiring the kid's determination. Li Hao, perhaps taking it too seriously, knew his own strength. His 6th stage in chess path had already surpassed the Emperor's previous 5th stage. "Again," said Emperor Yu, clearly not one to lose easily, as if defeat was a concept he hadn't quite experienced. After a few rounds of chess, Li Hao subtly held back, letting Emperor Yu enjoy the game without being entirely dominated. Yet, after these games, the Emperor's desire for chess was satisfied. In the 4th round, with a more casual demeanor, Emperor Yu casually asked, "Have you thought about what happens if you kill the Buddha Lord?" Li Hao, skilled in chess, became more serious at the Emperor's question, responding, "I have." Intrigued, the Emperor pressed further, "And what are you thinking?" Li Hao, after making his move, sighed and said, "I think the senior will probably have a headache dealing with the aftermath." Emperor Yu, slightly taken aback, asked, "What do you think I'll do?" Li Hao shrugged. "I haven't thought it through," the Emperor asked again. "Not thought it through?" Li Hao nodded, adding, "Whatever the decision, I am prepared to accept it, as long as it doesn't cost me my life." Emperor Yu gazed at the young man with a mix of amusement and frustration. After a few moments, he sighed. "You really have no worries. Aren't you afraid that the Buddhist sect will pressure me, forcing me to revoke your titles and take back everything you fought so hard for?" Li Hao's response was calm. If that's all there is, then the Buddha Lord's death was worth it. Emperor Yu was taken aback, his irritation growing. "You're truly willing to let go of everything. One sacrifices a moment of glory for an eternity of freedom." Li Hao smiled. "I'm just passing through this mortal world, with little to hold on to. Wine, food, and friends. That's enough for me." Emperor Yu shook his head, muttering, "Those words sound like Zen teachings. Maybe if the Buddha Lord understood this, he wouldn't have met his end at your hands." Li Hao's simple reply came, "Perhaps his cultivation wasn't enough." Their eyes met, and the tension broke into shared laughter. After a while, Emperor Yu asked, "If I were to strip you of your titles and honors, would you hate me?" Li Hao calmly shook his head as he placed his piece on the chessboard. "How could I? These were a reward from the senior," he said. "But you earned them through hard work. came the reply. Without those titles, I would work just as hard, Li Hao responded, his words steady and firm. Emperor Yu gave him a sharp look, a faint flicker of admiration hidden beneath his piercing gaze. Li Hao sat silently, the weight of his mentor's suffering hanging in the air. Emperor Yu, with a deep gaze, revealed the dire plan to neutralize the threat of the Buddhist sect and demons working together. We will make it look like you've been stripped of your titles and imprisoned, he explained, a strategic move to bait the enemies into revealing themselves. This deception will cost you dearly, the Emperor warned, locking eyes with Li Hao. What compensation do you need after all this? Li Hao, calm and unwavering, considered the cost of his sacrifice. The strategy was sound, yet the personal toll it would exact weighed heavily on him. A single nod was his response. He knew the path ahead would demand more than he was willing to give. The Emperor's plan was a double-edged sword, one that could either secure victory or unravel everything they had fought for. Li Hao paused, counting with his fingers, as he asked for calligraphy, musical scores, chess manuals, and some recipes, as though they were valuable treasures. Emperor Yu, observing him, thought about these requests and dismissed them as mere trinkets worth little to someone of Li Hao's immense power and influence. To him, they seemed like nothing more than worthless junk. Emperor Yu, his gaze fixed, asked if Li Hao desired anything else, but Li Hao shook his head, content for now. With no further words, Emperor Yu stood, ready to leave. The silence between them spoke volumes, as both seemed to hold deeper thoughts and unspoken understandings. In a tense moment, Li Hao swiftly offers to see Emperor Yu out, but the Emperor declines, turning his gaze to Feng Boping in the courtyard. With a fleeting glance, Emperor Yu remarks on Feng's mysterious past, recognizing him as the thief saint, one tainted by the Buddha Lord's dark influence. Li Hao confirms this with a heavy heart, the weight of the truth settling between them. Emperor Yu, ever the strategist, promises to speak with the Wang family, masters of the Mo River, in hopes of locating Feng's missing soul. But Li Hao, eager to act immediately, is cautioned against rushing into the matter. Emperor Yu advises him to wait for news to avoid complicating the situation further. Li Hao, understanding the wisdom and patience, agrees to hold back, trusting that the Emperor will ensure a thorough search. With a nod of reassurance, Emperor Yu departs, leaving Li Hao to contemplate the path ahead, uncertain yet resolute in his loyalty. In the heart of the Imperial Palace, as tension gripped the air, Emperor Yu's return was awaited with bated breath. He made his way to the Gantao Palace first, seeking the answers he needed before instructing the Wang family to search the Mo River for the lost remnants of Feng Boping's soul. As the unseen forces of the Divine Dynasty began to stir, a mysterious figure descended from the heavens, transforming into a young girl upon arrival. The palace, a hub of silent scheming, became the center of secretive activities as various agents were summoned. News quickly reached the emperor of a Buddhist faction planning to incite chaos in the cities, aiming to pressure him into submission. Emperor Yu, calm as ever, showed no surprise at this, his lips curling into a cold smile as he calmly awaited the unfolding drama, knowing exactly how it would end. Meanwhile, Chu Ju Yue, ever observant, inquired if the emperor had recently played chess with General Hao Tian, to which the emperor confirmed, his voice as unflinching as his expression. In the heart of the Imperial Palace, Emperor Yu's return marked the beginning of a covert operation. After confirming key answers at Gantao Palace, he dispatched agents to search for Feng Boping's residual soul in the Mo River. Unseen forces, typically hidden from the public eye, began to stir into action, with a mysterious figure descending into the palace, transforming into a young girl. Among the silent figures, a report from the Buddhist faction revealed their plans to create chaos across various cities, an attempt to pressure the emperor. Chu Jiyue, relaying this intelligence, noted the growing tension with the Buddhist faction. Despite their defiance, Emperor Yu remained unfazed, a cold smile gracing his lips as he calmly stated, "Let them make noise. They will soon get the response they are satisfied with." When Chu Juyue inquired if the emperor had visited General Hao Tian for a game of chess, Emperor Yu confirmed with a simple yes, his mind already occupied with the unfolding schemes. Upon hearing the answer, Chuju Yue couldn't suppress a bitter smile, though he had expected it. He imagined the Buddhist disciples would be so enraged by this news that it might send them into a fit. About General Xianxia, Emperor Yu said, glancing at him with a light chuckle. I offered him a solution, the one the Buddhist sect has long been hoping for. Chuju Yue's expression shifted slightly as he asked, would General Xianxia accept it? Emperor Yu's eyes flickered, and he nodded. He agreed without hesitation. Chuju Yue sighed in relief, a smile forming on his face. If General Hao Tian can understand your Majesty's intentions, it would be the best outcome. Emperor Yu smiled faintly, his gaze resting on the character Buddha on his desk, but his eyes grew colder. But I don't agree, he said quietly. Chuju Yue froze. He is willing to endure the hardship, but I do not want to see him suffer. Emperor Yu turned his gaze on Chuju Yue, adding, didn't you ask me earlier why I was so confident in him? Chuju Yue was left speechless. Because I like him, Emperor Yu said softly. That boy pleases my eyes, and that's all. Chuju Yue was rattled by the Emperor's revelation. He hadn't anticipated the depth of Emperor Yu's expectations for the boy. As unrest stirred among the Buddhist disciples, an imperial decree from Dayu State struck like thunder. The true culprit behind the murder of the Buddha Lord was finally revealed, the demon emperor of the great wilderness heaven, the dark force controlling 7 major demonic factions. The emperor's decree tore through the provinces, exposing the demon emperor's plot. Disguised as General Hao Tian, the demon emperor had infiltrated Mount Wuxia, where he killed the Buddha Lord, orchestrating the turmoil in Qingzhou, Liangzhou, Yuzhou, and beyond. The shockwaves of the decree swept across the realm, dispelling any doubts that had remained. The emperor, once quietly battling demonic forces, had now brought the desolate god's existence into the light, shattering any illusions of innocence. The people couldn't believe it. General Xianxia, a figure once trusted, was revealed to be a pawn in a devious plan to frame him. The truth was out, but the consequences of this revelation were yet to unfold. In a world teetering between demons and divine power, General Xiaoxian's genius is undisputed, having saved entire provinces and earning the respect of the Dayu Divine Dynasty. Yet, rumors and accusations swirl, with some claiming that his hands are stained with darker deeds. The Buddhist disciples swear they witnessed his involvement in a sinister act, while others argue that seeing is not believing. Some insist that no demons are involved, pointing fingers at the Emperor's cover-up. But the more intriguing question arises. Why would General Hao Tian kill the Buddha Lord, and what dark forces are truly at play? The common folk trust the Emperor's authority, while the noble families wrestle with self-interest and the politics of power. As tensions rise, the Buddhist sect seethes with anger, their once sacred foundation now tainted by the Emperor's ruthless manipulations. News of this conflict spreads even to the farthest reaches, where demonic forces, including the enigmatic desolate gods, brace themselves for the consequences. What will become of the Dayu Divine Dynasty when loyalty, betrayal, and ancient powers collide? The stage is set for a battle that will change everything. The Emperor's cunning move to absolve a dangerous young man has turned out to be more than a mere political tactic. It wasn't just about shifting the blame for the Buddha Lord's death, but rather a clear declaration of war. The opportunity they had anticipated no longer exists. The Emperor had outwitted them, not even pretending to step back. Instead, he cleverly redirected the wrath of the Buddhist sect toward the demons, using them as a front to protect Dayu. No loopholes, no tricks, just a direct challenge. With fury in his heart, the old man with the walking stick could only seethe in frustration, realizing that their plans had been completely thwarted.